source of news and insights for the marketing and advertisement community in India. And of course, Group M, the world's leading media investment company responsible for more than $60 billion in annual media investment through agencies such as Mindshare, Mediacom, Wavemaker, Essence, as well as outcome-driven programmatic audience companies, Axis. Our official hashtag for the day is hashtag Voice Marketing Conference. Make sure that you go ahead and use it throughout the day. If you enjoy anything out there, spread it out on the social networks using the hashtag Voice Marketing Conference. I would like to thank our valuable partners, the co-partners Slang Lab, making apps faster, easier, and more accessible. Before we move ahead, let's quickly take a look at the presentation, the partner AV that we have for you.
तूर दाल
तो दाल ढूंढ रहे थे.
Welcome back. To check flight status, please speak out the flight number.
SG130 tomorrow.
Showing you the flight status.
You're not audible.
Raveen, you're still not audible.
Raveen, we can't hear you, but since you were going to invite me anyway, so let me take it up while you fix your internet connection. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this cloudy, rainy afternoon in Mumbai, and welcome to you from wherever you are in Bangalore and Delhi. Thank you for joining us. The third wave of COVID, as the government is saying, is probably going to hit us soon. So I hope you are all safe wherever you are. You are making all efforts to get fully vaccinated. Today's agenda is very interesting. A couple of months back, we worked with, as Raveen mentioned, world's largest media investment agency, Group M, to curate a knowledge report on what voice marketing is all about. As we have seen in the last few years, digital adoption across industries, especially in the media sector, has gone up significantly. Consumers have taken up digital in a very big way, whether it is shopping on e-commerce, whether it is travel bookings or consumption of media, and so on. What's happened alongside that is that usage of digital through mobile phones has evolved significantly, and some of the statistics. This report was released in June, and the report, as you might have seen, says that a large 99% of internet penetration is now through mobile. Internet access is through mobile, unlike the past era where web access and mobile access used to be considered separately. now digital and mobile have integrated. Entire access is happening through the mobile phones. Almost 500 million people are now on smartphones, and there is another 400 million people who are on features phones who are yet to come online through smartphones, which means there's a very big opportunity, an opportunity that Reliance through its Jio and Google collaboration is eyeing to enter into the Indian market, and that obviously will change the dynamics of internet usage through the mobile phones again. We'll come more to that a little later during our talk. Some of the other things that the report talks about is about voice search, how it has gone up almost to 70% increase in usage of voice search, especially language search. Languages like Hindi have jumped 400%. It is natural and obvious, when all of us are using our mobile phones, speaking into the phone is much faster and far more convenient than using your thumbs and fingers to type because of the volume of work we do every day. I recall 20 years back when Aaj Tak, it's now more than 20 years, around 22 years now, when Aaj Tak launched in India, and it brought in this huge tsunami of language news TV in India. Before then, NDTV television used to be an English channel on Star TV called Star News. And Aaj Tak's launch led to a massive proliferation of language news television in India. One of the things we always used to talk about was how people are well versed with talking in their own languages. They might not be so adept at writing the mother tongue, but everybody is talking in their mother tongue language or some other Indian languages very regularly. So consuming content in your own tongue is going to lead to significant growth. And then post that, we saw this huge wave of investment in content in language TV across news, entertainment. And here we are with digital. The biggest growth in digital also in the last few years has been language content. And as you can see, it is not surprising. Even search is headed that way. Some interesting tidbits I picked up. 100 million queries happened on cricket in 2019. That's a huge number. We are already in 2021. So I'm sure that number has grown up significantly. It has significant implications for brands, for marketers, for companies that are looking at whose future is in some way connected to how people are using mobile phones, especially how they are searching for content through mobile phones. And that is what I'm going to discuss today with my friend and the CEO of Group M India, Prashant Kumar. PK, thank you for joining us. If you can switch on your camera and join this talk. Hi, PK. So before we start, let me welcome you to the conference. Thanks for joining hands with us to do this. And before we get into our conversation, I'd like you to, say your opening remarks.
Hey, thanks, Noel. Thank you so much for welcoming me. Actually, it's so great to catch up with all of you, and hope all of you are doing well. Thank you for joining us on this very session with Exchange for Media and InMobi to discuss the role of voice and its role in the marketing mix, right? I think we have all been, this work from home concept has been going on for some time, right? I think we have been all living in a video and a voice world, right, including this, right? And many times only the voice world, because people sometimes prefer to switch off the video, right? So voice is increasingly, we just saw what happened to Ravin. Suddenly his video was there and voice was not there, and it is so important, right? So
searching for his voice.
Yeah. I think the day is packed with some fantastic speakers, their thoughts, their thinking on the entire relevance of voice and how it's progressing. And there's also some interesting cases, interesting facts and insights that the report captures. We'll talk more about that, during the session. It'll be an interesting and exciting session for everybody. So once again, welcome and good to catch up.
Fantastic. Thank you again. And before I start with you, I'd also like to acknowledge InMobi, their team, and InMobi also contributed significantly to this entire initiative. It's a joint effort between Group M and InMobi, this voice marketing report. So as I begin, PK, let me ask you, before I get into what the report is about, and perhaps some people have already seen this or read it, let me ask you, why is this report being done? Naturally, as I mentioned at the start, voice is growing at a fast pace. It is something that a lot of brands, companies are looking at. Why did Group M decide to get into this area?
Yeah, great. I think as you mentioned, we at Group M, in association with our research partner in Mobi, as well as the Exchange for Media, we unveiled the Voice Box report. Essentially, it captures some of the emerging marketing trends, especially in the voice technology, right? And it also allows us to understand how some of these technology can help brands, utilize them and use them for better outcomes and therefore good results. The report captures the consumer's focus towards voice each passing day, as well as how it is influencing the consumer behavior in a very large extent. The voice technology has emerged to be consumers' go-to preference. If you look at some of the mobile activities which we do, whether it's ordering the food, you just saw the video, right? Getting directions, making reservations, booking the travels, and many things. Those kind of utility apps. I think voice is becoming more and more a go-to preference for consumers. So all of these trends, I think, is also helping us to understand how it can play a great role in the marketing framework and how brands can actually utilize this. In fact, many of the Indian internet users are fast adopting this, the search tool, and they are finding the leverage and the relevance of regional language, and therefore finding comfort in that, right? At Group M, our vision is to help all brands find their voice for what the future entails with the development in technology. We feel that voice as a marketing tool has its dimensions and complexities when it comes to bridging the gap between the brand and consumers. I think solutions around marketing through voice is very diverse, as it can be used in multiple ways to target both urban and rural audiences, right? And while we see that, in the urban market, the audience is already captured, these kind of trends much faster, it is also fast evolving into the rural market, right? And, many of these trends are captured in the voice report, and we feel that is a trend which can be very useful for the brands, for the marketers, and this entire report is one of the steps in that direction.
Fantastic. Before I dive back into voice, let me pull back a little bit and go to a broader level conversation. COVID has, as we've all seen, given a massive push to digital adoption among consumers and companies alike. And a lot of these trends were already in the play. What COVID has done in the last 14, 15 months is perhaps something that might have anyway happened over a 3-4 year time period. Companies are very deeply impacted. Overnight, they've had to adapt. Companies that were sitting on the fence have had to kind of jump in and figure out ways of working this out. According to you, what are the 3 key trends you've seen, which are very important for brands to understand in terms of what's happened in the last 15 months? Because once COVID goes away, the adoption of digital is only going to increase. The penetration is only going to increase further. We are not going to go back to the pre-COVID era when it comes to digital, right? So what are the things, 3-4 things that you've seen as Group M, and what you think brands should understand and prepare their future strategy accordingly?
It's a very significantly important question. At the same time, a question that covers a lot of width. As you rightly mentioned, anyways, there was a trend as well as the evolution of digital that the market has been witnessing. And what COVID has really done is to, make people do this faster, experiment things, consumers experiment things in different forms. And it has also therefore accelerated the utility of many of the technology aspects, in our daily life, right? Given the context that we're almost closer to 600 million active mobile internet users, almost 500 million smartphone users, all of this, as you mentioned, Naval, earlier in your narrative, that already there is a almost as equal to 300%, 270 to 300% increase in the voice search in the country, right? And these are all actually allowing one of the trends as voice. Voice is also convenience, right? So this is actually a convenient enabled technology which is helping people. So definitely one of the trends we're seeing is the entire voice technology is one of the key, trend which we should watch out for, right? There are many more, aspects which comes in. I think if you look at the entire framework of e-com, if you look at the entire framework of AI, machine learning, augmented reality, I think as a practice, the entire influential marketing as such has come in as a trend, which is helping marketers to find relevance for, as well as connecting to consumers. And many marketers are experimenting. They are seriously, applying it into the marketing framework. Not only that, it is also, being used into the entire business operations, right? The business shifts are happening using some of these technologies. In fact, it is very soon we will see an ecosystem in India where many of these technologies are being more put to use to ensure we recruit more consumers for brands as well as staying engaged with these consumers, right? This as voice and more because of the relevance of the voice we're talking. This will be a situation where the voice to access service on the internet. We will see soon many organizations putting that to use in their business, in the devices, and as a concept, how quickly the technology will evolve to make it a regular behavior, right? So many of this are evolving faster. We are seeing this already as one of the fast evolving space for marketers to try out as well as engage with consumers, and this is a continuous journey.
Fantastic. Very important points there. I wish we had time to delve into each of them in detail, but perhaps that's for another day. What we've also seen, PK, with digital is working at multi levels, right? There are companies, FMCG companies, for instance, that have adopted to e-commerce, that have had to adopt to e-commerce overnight. There are new brands which are in legacy industries, so to say, which are launched only online. There are digital first brands. We have seen so many of them that have come up in the last few months, or perhaps the last 2 years. There is adoption of e-commerce that has been such an important aspect. And e-commerce is one area where the game has changed for companies across sectors. There is no industry which is not touched by e-commerce. And I know that WPP also has a very significant e-commerce practice. Tell me the changing landscape of how digital is being consumed by or being used by consumers and its impact on brands obviously cannot leave the agency ecosystem untouched. Agencies have also had to kind of acquire skills very fast, have had to adopt very fast, unless you want to really become a relic of the past. What you have seen is that, naturally agencies and brands have to go where consumers are going. What are the 2-3 things that you think the agency today needs to do, or what are your learnings as a leader from the last 15 months of how your future is looking like over the next 3-4 years for an advertising agency?
I think these are exciting times now. These are truly once in a lifetime experience which you're seeing. Over the last so many generations, we have never seen a situation like this where the pandemic has come and influenced every level across, and from livelihood to to building a future. Everything has taken a different pattern and help people to rechart their entire aspect, right? Any industry, I mean, health tech, of course, healthcare, wellness, etc. is a given. But the technology aspect into this is obviously making it more and more, more and more faster, more and more convenient, more and more useful for people to work on, right? This is again a very vast subject. I think, as I mentioned earlier, there are lots of trends which are coming in. I mentioned about the AI, AR, voice, programmatic aspect, which is now, it's not anymore new. Personalization, which continues to be relevant. Different formats of video marketing aspect. Shoppable content. We talked about e-com. There are D2C platforms marketers are actually working on. influencer marketing, and so on. I mean, imagine, 5 years back, we probably did not have any of these, any of these terminologies being used in a conversation, right? And that's all come in, especially in the last, 8 to 10 months. Again, as an ecosystem from an agency perspective, our job, for a purposeful communication for our clients is to enable our clients, to lead our clients, right? We need to be, a couple of steps ahead, right? And being a leader, the responsibility comes on to shape the market in that order, right? So a lot more emphasis on how technology can be used becomes a key priority for all of us, right? A lot more emphasis on how we can help each other by developing each other, training each other, learning becomes a key priority for all of us, right? I think it's also important to experience, and in order to experience in this world which is evolving, you got to experiment. So taking some risk, experimenting few things, actually, earning a space for yourself to do a few mistakes if that is okay. However, learning of those mistakes and using that and applying that to build for all of this becomes extremely critical. I think it's important to keep a close watch on the consumer base, understand what's happening in their life, deeply get insights on them, listen to them, hear them out, know what's going on. This is a scenario where, in our country, we have a mixture of, uh, you know, uh, uh, mixture of aspects like lockdowns, which are happening in multiple geographies in different forms. So we are being tested in a continuous manner. So we genuinely feel that in all of this, the enablement of technology, the enablement of the, adopting to different, solutions, and trying out every time actually helps to build in the newer solutions to make it more impactful. So we are in a continuous journey right now, right? We are still not in a, we can't even use the word post-COVID yet, right? So this journey is more learning. We got to really get into it. It is exciting time. I think these are all newer things for people to learn and adopt to. So yes, these are a few things which we are doing within ourselves. We are also very concerned about how we can help our people, as well as get diverse thinking and get diverse thoughts within it, so that we build a stronger team to challenge ourselves, right? So these are a few things now, which we're currently.
I think very rightly said. The other day, I was having a similar conversation with Hemant Malik of ITC, and two things he said stuck to me. One was that how they've created a training program for the leadership team on digital, because the youngsters know much more than some of the leadership team members do in terms of their adaptability and their usage, the skill level on digital. And the other thing he said to me, which you also kind of reinforce, is about allowing your team, pushing them to make mistakes, doing it, even if they make mistakes, because digital is so new for everyone that the only way to learn is by going out and do it and sort of, experimenting. Let me go back to our topic of discussion today, which is voice here. And, I know individual aspects of the report we have done, as well as the key aspects, will be discussed in the sessions that follow this conversation. But I wanted to specifically talk to you about regionalization of voice. What trends have you seen? Some of those are mentioned in the report, but what's your sense on that? Because India is such a vast, heterogeneous country. Across every sphere of our life now, language has taken over, whether it is media or, consumer goods. Language is the primary driving force of consumption. And what are the trends you've seen when it comes to language in the, voice space?
Yeah, just like how we keep saying that we're probably not just one country, we are a combination of multiple countries, essentially because there are multiple languages and there are multiple culture, and it's important to understand how the technology again is getting enabled here. I think the Indian internet users are fast adopting the search tool and finding comfort in regional languages. The engagement in local language is a fun way to communicate and even learn, right? We're also seeing already that some of the big tech companies and voice platform companies like Alexa, Google, and Geo, they're all supporting regional languages, right? In fact, a language is probably a faster way to get to the, the heart of the consumer. So therefore, it could be a secret success for many brands. Many of us are observing this, brands, marketers, the entire ecosystem to this change in the consumer behavior. And I think there are multiple options and solutions which are emerging now, right? Many of them you will see as examples in today's agenda, and some of the cases that are and insights are also captured in the report.
Fantastic. I've been already sent messages to wrap up the session since the other speakers are waiting. So before we go, one last question, PK. I assume there's a lot of work on clients that is happening at Group M when it comes to voice. So what are the initiatives Group M has specifically taken, and how are you evangelizing, voice as an ecosystem?
I think it's a very interesting space. We feel it's a fantastic trend where many marketers can get larger impact and very useful to the entire effort they're putting for the brand growth. The entire convenience of voice. We at WPP Mumbai campus, we have rolled out an experiential voice lab that actually welcomes all clients and partners to come and experience the power of voice. In fact, that's a space which I would Naval, you should also come over and see and experience that. And it's a fantastic thing for again learning experience. We're also helping some of the world's biggest brands by using interactive voice ads to engage with the consumers on an increasing scale. We're actively evangelizing voice, and the emerging tech by running cascading workshops, different knowledge sessions from different experts. In fact, one of the examples is the entire informatic voice AI technology was used to implement an interactive voice ad campaign on the Ghana platform with over 250,000 voice engagements in Hindi. I'm sure you will hear many of these case studies through the rest of the day.
Fantastic. With that, let me thank you again, PK, for joining us. Thank you for collaborating with us to curate this initiative. I hope we are able to meet physically sometime very soon, and this entire episode is behind us. Back to you, Ravin, and I look forward to the rest of the sessions like all of us.
Yeah, I would also like to thank the entire E4M team and InMobi team for helping us together to put this report. And I wish everybody all the best, and take care. Wish you good health and have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thanks. Ravin, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, both the gentlemen. I hope I'm audible now and the sound is good.
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. So that kind of, re-solidifies the whole importance of voice as such. And I'm really glad that we're doing this conversation. I would like to thank Mr. Prashant Kumar, CEO, South Asia Group M, and of course, Mr. Naval Ahuja, co-founder and director Exchange for Media, for that wonderful and insightful conversation. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time we move on to the next set. That's beautiful. In today's world, many of us are always in a terrible hurry. No time to stand and stare. And there are many who can't write or type, but can actually express their thoughts very well. Quite a few also live in their own world of curiosity, looking for answers to anything and everything in an instant. For all the needs of today, voice is what is making the noise. To hear the voice, let me quickly take you to the WPP Voice Lab to meet our very own Neeraj Ruparel, the voice man of Group M WPP. As we all know, is super passionate about voice marketing and is one of the most buzzing words in the country right now in terms of voice marketing. He adds his voice to the voice. So enjoy this one of its kind, fun and interactive session with two camera setup and voice assistants. So Neeraj, I'll quickly hand it over to you.
Excited to be here from WPP's Voice Lab from our Mumbai campus. This is an exciting section in our event when we are going to be decoding the voice box, Group M's first voice report. What's really unique about this entire report is we've collated all possible opportunities when it comes to rural India and urban India, and we have placed a use case against each of these opportunities, which are India specific, all deployed in India. So just to give you a perspective how voice is so unique when it comes to Indian market, it cuts across devices. So whether it's a $10 phone or a $20 phone, which is now connected on internet, or a pure play smartphone, we see a lot of use cases on voice, which is evolving across these device sets. Alright, so today we are going to be talking to two of the most popular voices in the space of voice marketing. That's Google and Alexa. Let's have a dialogue with Alexa first. Alexa, audience wants to know, how long have you been around?
Well, I've been in India for around 3.5 years now. I started out my journey in the US about 7 years ago. Since then, it's been an amazing journey interacting with people around the globe.
Fabulous. Who's your creator, Alexa? You would love to know that.
I was created by Amazon. But the person who breathed life into me is Dr. Rohit Prasad. He is the head scientist at Alexa and hails from Ranchi, Jharkhand.
Wow, that's news to me. What do Indians normally ask you?
I've received a lot of love in India. Interestingly, Indians express their love around 19,000 times a day by saying, Alexa, I love you, and about 6,000 times a day by asking, Alexa, marry me. I make people laugh close to 9,000 times every day by cracking a joke. Apart from Hindi jokes, people love playing the impossible Bollywood quiz and also listening to All India Radio.
Wow, that's so much love. No wonder you've broken 1 million hearts in India. How many mobile users does Alexa have?
There's phones from OnePlus, Xiaomi, Motorola and Sony that have Alexa inbuilt. You know what? Maybe you should ask that question to Google.
Alright, let me just take this up with Google. Google, could you add to this?
I'm omnipresent. To be specific, I'm present on smartphones that have Android 5.0 and higher. Indian smartphone market is huge with around 500 million smartphones, out of which nearly 95% are Android. I don't wanna brag, but I hope this shows how wide my reach is.
While voice assistant have become a part of urban families, how vast is the adoption in rural India?
Rural India is a huge opportunity for growth. That is why we partnered with Vodafone Idea to create a solution for Bharat. With a simple feature phone, Google Assistant can be accessed without the internet, simply by calling a phone number. To accelerate this adoption, we even made the service available in 9 Indian languages.
Alexa, do you want to add anything here?
हाँ, क्यों नहीं? एक इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी है जो मैं आपके साथ शेयर करना चाहूंगी। नागपुर से करीब 170 किलोमीटर दूर एक छोटे से गांव के स्कूल में उन्होंने मुझे एक टीचर के रूप में डिस्गाइज कर दिया। उन्होंने एक एको स्पीकर एक टीचर के पोशाक के साथ एक पुतले में डाल दिया। इससे सीखने की शैली में इंटरैक्टिविटी जुड़ गई और बच्चों को पढ़ने में मजा आने लगा। रूटीन में मैं जनरल नॉलेज, मैथ्स और साइंस से जुड़े बच्चों के सवालों का जवाब देने लगी।
Alright, that's a very interesting use case which marketers should look up to. In fact, rural and India is really upbeat and there's some phenomenal work which is being done by marketers. I would like to call out a work which was being done for Godrej Consumer Goodnight, wherein we created this Pathshala experience on IVRS alone. And now we are seeing a lot of connected audio opportunities also peaking up, and a lot of new solutions are getting delivered in rural markets. So voice in rural is something we are absolutely bullish about, and in times to come we'll see tons and tons of use cases getting landed in rural on voice. Alexa, could you give me an example of how a brand has used Alexa for voice commerce?
Brands across so many industries have been building skills to have a personal connect with their customers. One of the most innovative brand campaigns that I can recall is the Dairy Milk Silk Valentine's Day campaign. I guided lovebirds who asked me how to go far for love. I recommended romantic ideas and gestures to surprise their loved ones. I prompted them to even add Dairy Milk Silk Heart Pop to their shopping cart, as the perfect gift for the occasion.
Can you tell me something about a typical Alexa user? That'll be good to know.
According to a survey by InMobi, a typical user is a relatively younger person for whom using voice is a way of life, especially for entertainment and information. Almost 40% of these users interact with me daily.
There's a lot of talk about voice being part of the overall SEO. Can you illustrate this with a brand? Maybe you can refer the voice box.
You're right about that one. Voice should be a part of a brand's overall SEO strategy. After all, voice is a preferred medium of input not just across Google search, but also across platforms such as YouTube and music streaming apps, to name a few. Just to illustrate how big the voice search ecosystem is, Voice queries on search are growing at a phenomenal 270% year-on-year. For example, Royal Enfield has adopted voice search as a part of their overall SEO strategy, which has resulted in better visibility of the website when end users are having conversations with Google Assistant supported devices.
Alright, so how does a brand start its journey on voice? That's a pressing question coming in from all our advertisers.
I found out some interesting points on this in the voice box. Building a brand on voice is not as complex as most brand managers think of it. Firstly, marketers should think of voice as an integral part of their marketing strategy, and not just a part of checklist that should be ticked off. Following simple guidelines such as building a brand persona and creating an actionable experience for their consumers. Focusing on producing relevant and voice-friendly content can do magic for brands. There's always platform recommended agencies to help you create enchanting applications on voice.
Alright, that's cool. That's so insightful. Google, could you tell us about some of the emerging trends that's impacting industries across different verticals?
You'll be surprised to know how voice technology is set to bring a makeover to many industries. For example, let's look at the healthcare industry. We are witnessing operational challenges in the healthcare industry due to COVID. Well, voice tech can be used to streamline processes such as record keeping. Also, voice tech is being used to make education more fun and engaging, especially when schools are closed and there is a need for secondary tutoring.
Yeah, totally. I think at WPP Foundation, we've created an interesting voice app for our underprivileged students, and the team is going to talk more about it as we go along on this event. Alright, that was a super engaging session and it was super enlightening for all of us. A lot of information for you marketers out there to go back to the drawing board and draw your strategies on how to integrate voice marketing into your media mix. With that, if you want to know more about voice marketing, please download the Voice Box, which is Group M's first voice report, which is studded with use cases to definitely guide you towards creating more engaging and innovative voice solutions. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, so that was Neeraj Ruparel at WPP Studios in Mumbai, and what a wonderful session that was. Thank you, Neeraj. Of course, thank you, Alexa, and thank you, Google, for that wonderful session. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move on, let me quickly remind you once again, the official hashtag is hashtag Voice Marketing Conference. Make sure that you spread the word and let us know what you think about this amazing conference that we have for you. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to the next session. This is the fireside chat between Julia Rast, Global Solutions and Innovation Manager, Zaxis, and Stas Tushinsky, CEO, co-founder, Instrumatic. They are going to be talking about voice advertising goes mainstream. I'll hand it over to these two.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks for having us. Hi, Robin.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Stas. How are you doing today?
Hi, Julia. I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, good. Very excited to be here. And I guess we're talking about voice advertising today, right? So shall we quickly kick off and start by explaining what voice advertising really is?
Yeah. Up until now, all previous advertising formats have talked at consumers, right? And this has been the case for decades. But now technology has created a whole new opportunity. You can listen. And the voice era opens a new chapter in marketing. Brands can listen and speak with consumers just like we are speaking right now. So how does it work? What is voice advertising? So imagine you're listening to your favorite music app. Let's say it's Ghana. And instead of getting a 30-second regular audio ad, you would hear something like this. Hey, Starbucks is here. Do you want to skip the line in the morning and have a hot cup of coffee waiting for you? And you can respond by saying, yeah, I'd love that. All right, just get our app and we'll get a hot cup of coffee waiting for you. Or you can say, no, I don't like coffee. Sorry. All right, sorry about that. We'll try hotter next time. And voice and interactivity creates a very rich relationship between a brand and a consumer, because now, well, first of all, people feel heard by participating in a conversation. And also in the process, marketers can learn something about them. And at the same time, people get control over their ad experience. So if ad is relevant or not interesting, they can skip it. But if it's relevant, then people can unpack, learn more, and it makes advertising really entertaining journey, because now you can actually navigate through a certain path and uncover interesting surprises. And as we all know, the best ads always tell a story, and voice ads make the user an active participant in the story. Ads can actually become episodic, which means that we can connect multiple ads in a single narrative, and we can do that based on previous response history, which makes it really powerful marketing tool. And all the campaigns that we have run and that we saw delivered really high engagement rates and great results. And I think there is no one better than Julia to tell us more about their experience with voice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you hit the hill on the net on the head, right? I mean, there's no denying in the rapid evolution of voice tech. And if anything was proven last year, we've seen how resilient tech is and how it could really amplify people's lives. And more people start to use their voice as a tool to drive their devices. And it makes sense, right? Because our life becomes increasingly busy and we're handling multiple tasks at the same time, and therefore voice is very a convenient tool to use our devices. And within that consumer changing behavior, brands are in the middle of it, and brands need to adapt to that change. But what isn't changing is that ever growing incredible amount of choice people have every day. And I guess today's always on consumer really demands convenient access to information when it comes to buying product, but also when they're exploring services. And voice advertising really offers marketers, to your point, a flexible mix of creative storytelling, but also data-driven application at scale. And combining those two can really elevate personal messaging and subsequently lead to higher return on investment. And I think this is absolutely crucial for brands, right? Because no matter how accurate or how well our media execution may be, creative content is still a massive influencer of our campaign success. And what does campaign success really mean? I think we really have to rethink what success means, because before we really used a click as a proxy and really told everyone, like, if someone clicks on an ad, it means they're interested. While we all now know that, if someone clicks accidentally on an ad, it doesn't mean they're interested. There could be tons of reasons why they are not interested. And the opposite is true as well. If someone doesn't click in your ad, they may be interested as well. And over time, we found new meaningful ways to add more insights into our digital media tactics. And we've applied artificial intelligence. We are layering multiple data sources to identify purchase patterns. And it all become more granular and more insightful. But what is lacking still today is that qualitative layer of why people are interested. And within that fast moving and trend sensitive landscape, consumer preferences also constantly change. There isn't really a traditional consumer profile anymore, and therefore ads are subject to change. And I think, using voice advertising can really help brands adding that qualitative layer to their media mix strategy. And I guess I'll kick off with some examples too, if you don't mind, obviously. I think voice advertising can be really infused into multiple ways into our media tactics. But one of my favorites really is, you touched on it or earlier, is applying voice AI to audio ads. So we did a case study last year, and we used your tag of Instrumatic, and we activated on Ghana Supply here in India for Pizza Hut. And basically what we did in that campaign is Pizza Hut wanted to gain awareness for their buy one, get one free campaign. And they really wanted to drive awareness, but simultaneously add more engagement into that layer and subsequently drive more scale. So we decided to implement voice activated comments in the audio ads. And we asked people whether or not they were interested in the offering. And it was a very simple execution. We asked if they were interested, and if they were directed to a landing page. And what we found in this campaign is that the engagement rate was 8 times higher than a normal audio campaign. And 4% of the users actually was interested in ordering the buy one, get one for free pizza. And when we followed up after that with a retargeting campaign, we saw that 3% of the people who had a negative attitude before changed their mind and had a positive attitude towards the campaign and the brand. So we're not for that interaction and adding voice technology to the audio campaign. People may have not changed their minds. So it really demonstrates how powerful voice can be and how important it is for a brand to have that direction, that connection at scale with consumers. And another example, for instance, is how voice advertising can really help driving customer engagement and ultimately leading to consumer loyalty. And I think that touches on what you said before, Stas, the importance of I'm not interested. There's such a wealth of information behind that answer. And any conversational format, basically what it does is it mimics a conversation, and it basically allows a brand to start having a two-way interaction with a brand rather than a one-way interaction. You're not pushing a message, but you're actually asking for information. And that information can be infused into your omni-channel strategy. It can really ensure that your entire digital media strategy can be enhanced and subsequently also your business outcomes. And a great example of an industry that is really benefiting from that is the auto industry, because globally, governments have set targets to reduce carbon footprints, right? And the automotive industry is really engaged, and they have to, because they're a big contributor to the carbon footprint. And if they don't start engaging with their audience right now with their new electric cars, they might risk losing them. Because the thing is, with electric cars and selling them, it's differently. The customer journey is different because there's less information out there on electric cars, and therefore consumers have little references and they have to explore more before they can base their decision and choose for a brand. Before, with fossil fueled cars, people could, maybe they had their parents or their friends that drove a type of brand, or they had a driving lesson and they have really fond memories of that driving lesson, so they really want to go for that brand. Research actually shows for people who are in the market for electric cars, they're not necessarily buying a car that they are familiar with, but they're going for a brand that offers them the information that they're looking for at that time. So for brands, that really means they need to start communicating with their clients at scale. And by doing so, they can start, adding engagement layers, but also working on brand trust. And ultimately, that leads to consumer loyalty. Brands who are not adding that, element of personalization into their digital media mix really risk losing consumers on the longer term.
Yeah. There is a question from the audience. So the question is, would there be a recording button like a CTA in the Ghana app when the voice ad appears on Ghana? That's a very good question. So the way we roll out voice ads is through allowing people to opt in. So our clients and our publishers, they tell their users like, hey, if you want to enable voice interactivity and replace one-way audio ad experience with a two-way dialogue, then you have to opt in. You have to give us permission to enable mic when it's appropriate. And so users don't actually have to do anything. The moment they get a voice ad, the voice ad itself ends with a question or with something like, hey, let us know if you want to learn more. And then we open mic for 4 seconds to get a response. Then people say something, and based on the response, we continue the advertising journey. And speaking of platforms and the adoption and the scale, I mean, Instrumatic and GroupM, we've been at the forefront of this innovation, and we can see that right now, voice advertising really enters mainstream market. So a couple of publishers that already using Instrumatic voice technology and growing their supply. So they are Ghana, the largest music app in India. It's Pandora, the largest music app in the US. It's many radio groups. We have several big publishers coming online this year, and follow the announcements. And what's really great is that we've been also working hard to expand the offering into the programmatic ecosystem. So just recently, again, with GroupM, we ran the first programmatic execution of a voice. So it's getting there. You won't notice it, but very soon you won't be able to imagine the media plan without a voice ad line item there.
Yeah, and I think really the direction of traveling for voice advertising is there are already so many strategies out there that brands can leverage and start reaping the benefits of voice advertising. And especially with a channel such as audio, enriching it with voice advertising really offers clients to engage with people on scale and really add more impact to their media campaigns. And we really see this as a great opportunity to be smart about our digital media tactics and engaging people by asking questions and maybe even circumventing the limits of cookies. I know it's not a topic today, but it's really definitely an option that a conversational technology can do. And it also allows us to capture true intent and really infuse it into our media channels and omni-channel strategies. And it makes the entire digital media activation more valuable and impactful for our clients. Not sure if I know we only have 15 minutes. I'm not sure how we are on time, Stas, but what do you think are the next steps for voice advertising?
I think that voice advertising is going to be part of every ad-supported medium. So audio vertical is a very natural place for it to start to thrive, but eventually we'll see voice ads in the video vertical, in the gaming vertical, navigation, and any other ad-supported apps and services. So I think that voice is every marketer should think of voice as mobile ads 10 years ago. It's just the beginning, but it's going to be really big, and it's going to affect every vertical that we have today. And what do you think, Julia?
I totally agree. I think it would be wise for brands to start exploring it now, from small to large. I think there is an opportunity for all of them. And yeah, what we've seen, I mean, numbers aren't lying. More and more people are starting to use their voice to, again, drive their devices, and brands can really, add that layer of quality to their campaigns by using voice technology. And I guess on that note, I hope this conversation gave everyone food for thought. And I think we're going to hand over to Ravin again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you, Stas. And of course, it was a wonderful session, and we really had a great time listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of today.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining in, welcome to Exchange for Media Group M Voice Marketing Conference. We are live on Exchange for Media on YouTube, Twitter, FB, and LinkedIn. And the hashtag for the day is #Voice Marketing Conference. Make sure you spread the word around. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to the next session. It's time now for Marketing Leaders Panel. The topic is why brands need a voice strategy. The session is going to be about consumers in India that are adopting voice technology at record rates, and brands must keep up or risk losing out to competitors. The panel will discuss how brands should utilize voice assistance technology to deliver customer experiences that are actually helpful. Those taking part are Anushka Shetty, Chairperson and Group CEO, Grey Group India. I also have Ajay Dang, Joint Executive President, Head Marketing, Ultratech Cement, Aditya Birla Group joining in, Gaurav Jeet Singh, General Manager, Media, South Asia, Unilever, Mohit Boitra, Co-founder, Air Pollution Action Group, Ravi K. Sharma, Vice President, Revenue, Ghana. The session is hosted by Ajay Gupte, CEO, South Asia Wavemaker. I'll hand it over to Ajay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravin. And a very good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for being here today. I am Ajay Gupte, CEO for Wavemaker South Asia, and I welcome you all to our panel discussion on why brands need a voice strategy. Voice technology has offered a convenient and intuitive mode of interaction for millions across. It has democratized access for those who cannot read or write. In my personal experience, I have seen some amazing examples of how voice has been used. It's your driver who will no longer be typing where his destination is on the map. He's saying it out. It's the blue collar worker, the plumber, the painter, the carpenter, who's sending you voice messages on WhatsApp rather than typing out these messages. Voice has allowed these people to communicate using technology, without, as has removed all the barriers for them. On the other hand, you have the younger generation, and here I refer to my 14-year-old son. His voice to communicate with search. He is never typing what he wants to look for. He is just saying it out and trying to get what he wants. When he's looking for movies, he's just saying out the movie name and he's not typing it out. This is the generation of the future. And like my son and his friends, this generation is going to depend more and more on voice. To effectively communicate with consumers, brands need to embrace behavioral changes like these that consumers are going through. Hence, marketers need to study the impact of voice technology on consumer behavior and should adopt it to make their efforts more effective. Brands across various categories such as CPG and travel have already started integrating voice assistants with their consumer service to help customers. Consumers today are using voice tech to order food, to get directions, to make reservations, book travel, etc. AI and machine learning would further assist businesses to enhance customer experience and improve ROI. Earlier today, you heard Neeraj share key insights from Decoding the Voice Box, a report by Group M in association with Exchange for Media and InMobi. Do download the report. You will find some excellent examples of how brands have effectively used voice tech. We will be discussing some of those examples here today with the experienced marketers who have actually implemented those examples. So, panel, hello everybody. Great to have you here and a privilege to be talking along with you. I'll start with you, Gaurav. Hi. Gaurav.
Hi.
Hi. Gaurav, you guys have, at Unilever been pioneers of voice, and you've done some really great work right from many years ago. And there's so many examples that have been quoted. I have a few questions for you. How practical is voice application and how can this be diversified across brands, businesses and plans? Could you share some of the examples, some of the wonderful examples that you put together in the past?
First, Ajay, thank you. Great meeting you. And, I think more than practicality is the necessity of voice that is driving a lot of our use cases. Ajay, if you really see, whether it was Kankaryura station that we did around about 11 years back, like you mentioned, not 11, around 7 years back. Essentially, the big learning is that there are the paradox of how you reach consumers on media is pretty startling. And like you mentioned, your sons, people like your son, we can only possibly reach through audio gaming interface in a lot of cases, compared to somebody in rural India who you can only use reach through mobile devices and that to voice. I think what is the practicality of this use case is around 4 or 5 vectors that I felt are important that we keep in mind. The first one is more to do with this paradox that I talked about, where consumers can be reached and can't be reached. And it just makes it possible to reach consumers using mobile devices. I think the second big vector, as I was putting together my thoughts before this, was that if you really see, there's a big move where technology has caught up with the need for audio. So if you really see how things evolved, and radio came in maybe a year before cinema, or cinema came a year uh, before radio did. But what really happened is that what caught up by 1927, good about 30 years after radio, was when talkies came in. I think what we forget is that audio video experience is pretty complete in itself. But what video makes you do is to think a bit more about the content and create your story in your own mind. So the practicality from a consumer point of view is tremendous, because what they are looking to do is also be part of the creative process, because when they hear video, they are essentially creating what a director would do in an audiovisual interface, right? And thereby it becomes a part of their life. So I think that's one big practical reason to really deploy voice at scale. And for us, it's about going to consumers at the bottom of the pyramid, but we're also finding use cases now at the top of the pyramid, where with apps like Clubhouse, or even with the kind of interface that Alexa allows for, with the skills that it allows you to evolve, it really builds in another muscle where you can really give great consumer experience at a fraction of a cost. Because in the past, that experience would have needed big, large call centers where people would sit in spite of all the training, you would have a very, very mixed experience for a consumer. And I think what technology catch up on audio allows you to do is to create some really powerful experiences for consumers in pretty economical ways. So I think it's hugely practical and made more practical now because of technology. I hope I answered your asking earlier.
Yes, yes, yes. Thanks, Gaurav. I like, you're going across the entire spectrum from reaching out to those who can't and those who choose to use voice. I think that's a very interesting way of being able to manage it. And my second question is for Ajay Dang. Hi, Ajay.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Ajay, we are seeing increased attention to voice-based investment from various brands. Why is it necessary for brands to have a voice integration in today's world? And with your experience, do share how you've been using voice to build trust among customer base.
So, I think from our perspective, the way we look at it, I think voice is genuinely a fairly basic and from an everyday basis human perspective, it is the preferred medium of communicating and to each other. The question is, technology is only catching up to it now, right? So far, I think the main medium was being used as text and other mediums. Of course, the two preferred mediums, like Gaurav talked about, are the audiovisual mediums. And therefore, I think it's not a question of why voice. It is the technology catching up to something which is fairly basic and fairly fundamental in how we communicate to each other. It's just catching up to that. From our perspectives, I think we realize that there is the entire access piece. From an audiovisual piece, only 2/3 of India has the direct access on video, on television, and so on. And I think about 70%, close to 65 to 70% of our market, which is individual home builders, comes from rural India. And that's the market which is growing, I think, triple the pace of rest of India. So reaching them, so that's an access point issue. The third piece is India is vernacular. And again, there, I think technology hasn't caught up as much, but voice helps bridge that gap across with us. And the third and last piece from our perspective is what we realize that audio and voice, I think, stays far more, contrary to most belief. I think even more than the visual memory, it stays much more with consumers is something that science tells us. Then there is something which is very specific to our industry, which is cement and home builders and people who are building homes for the first time. India is no longer home building at the retirement age, our parents' generation 60, 65. Today, home building is happening at 35, 40. Now, here's a person who's building the biggest project of his life, doesn't have enough life experience, does not have knowledge, does not have trust who to go to, and therefore needs handholding and assistance. And the wonderful and interesting use case here is he doesn't even know what he doesn't know, right? And such a case, asking somebody to even search for content is basically throwing him at the deep end. Versus that, having a conversation, having a voice-based conversation with somebody, allowing somebody to interact with you, I think it's an interesting use case that we've figured out, which is unique to our industry and maybe similar problems elsewhere. What we've seen is that we've deployed this at a fairly, and we've not gone at the shiny end of the scale, but even very basic things like OBD, etc., that we've found, we've seen a very significant business results coming out of those for the 4 or 5 reasons that I talked about. We have uplifts upwards of 20 to 30% among these consumers coming our way, and therefore to us it is more some of the suppliers catching up and the technology catching up. What is the essential India consumer need per se, and marketer need to communicate to them and interact with them.
Thanks, Ajay. And you're so right. The reason voice is so intuitive and people are able to get onto it so easily is because that's what we've been used to. We've been used to talking to each other.
And the simplest case is, if I were to be typing out whatever I am telling you, I think it'll take me 4 times the time, right? And which is why I think your driver or your son or anybody, it's just intuitive, right? We are just discovering what is sitting on our nose, which is that's the way, almost basic and fundamental means of communication.
Perfect. And I think you made a very, very valid point about youngsters being actually getting into building homes today. It's such an important insight, really. And at 60, you have so much more understanding and learning, and so much you would have seen, which you put into play. But at 30, 35, you need that much more assurance. And what you're doing, I'm guessing, is really helping with that. So that's a fantastic example. Thanks, Ajay. Talking about voice being intuitive and audio being a very strong new mode of communication. We have with us Ravi, who's with Ghana, and voice and audio is his main product. So, hi, Ravi.
Hi, Ajay. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thanks. Lovely having you. Question for you. So, give us some insights on how consumers are engaging with Ghana, because I mean, you have all those insights. Your whole product is about voice and audio, and I believe you've integrated voice into your product in a very strong way. So do share some insights with us.
Sure. Thank you for having. Very excited, to push voice and audio as a powerful medium. So I think our journey started a couple of years back, and in one of our consumer researches, we found 2 key aspects of consumer behavior, the way they were interacting with our app. And the first one was that not everyone is very comfortable typing in a 5-inch mobile screen, when they're looking for content. They would also not be very conversant in, spelling artists and songs. So it was really confusing for them. It was kind of a friction point. And the second, challenge that we had was, how do we keep our users engaged during their busy moments? So when you're listening to music, maybe cooking, exercising, driving, how can we empower our users to help them search for content, when they're doing the secondary activity? And we saw an opportunity early on in voice to enable sort of a seamless human-centric experience for our users to discover content natively through voice search. And we launched this feature about a year and a half back, and we've seen like fantastic adoption, month on month. As of now, as we speak, I think close to about 1/3 of our searches for content on Ghana is driven through voice search. That's like massive, like 30 million searches a month on an average. We also, another interesting insight that we have seen is that we have noticed a higher affinity, obviously in young adults, that 18 to 34 demo are the voice early adopters. So they're driving close to about 50% of our searches. But there's another segment at 35 to 44, what I call mature adults. I think there is a solid adoption on that front. So close to about 30% of our voice interactivity is happening. And then there is this subset of senior citizens or 60 plus, I think they are also using, but largely is driven through devotional content and those kind of searches. Another interesting insight, and when I was pulling those numbers, assumption was that there was higher adoption on urban centers. I think it's completely democratic in terms of voice adoption. I mean, the top cities that we have seen, in the Hindi-speaking belt, like Aligarh, Raipur, Bhopal, Dehradun, these are the cities that we're seeing a higher adoption of voice-based searches, and which is really interesting. And people in these cities are also, using voice as a utility and an aid. Finally, I think the last insight was, again, obviously on our platform, males and females skewed is definitely skewed towards male, but within the female consumer base that we have, the adoption of voice is higher compared to the adoption of males. That was a really third interesting insight. So I'm guessing, women sitting at home, or they're doing one activity, music is in the background, they use voice to kind of tune in, tune out. So I think those are a couple of really interesting insights that we have noticed in the last about a year or so.
Amazing, amazing. And I can totally get it. You're doing something else, music is in the background, you're saying out what you want, you don't need to actually go and type it in. It makes so much sense. And 30 million searches a month is quite a decent sized number today. Superb, superb. So my next question is for Mohit Piotra. And Mohit, having heard that the rural sections and those who are struggling to read and write and vernacular is a territory where voice is extremely important. And the kind of work that you have done really, as the part of the anti-pollution action group is amazing. And being part of Delhi, staying in Delhi, I myself and my team is also grateful for the work that you have done. So do tell us a little bit more about what you did and the results that you got out of it.
Thanks, Ajay. So this is actually an example of something where we used voice in the battle against stubble burning. For those of us who live in Delhi, we all know, in Punjab there's stubble burning, Haryana, etc. Lots of stubble burning in the winter, which causes all the pollution in our lives. So we work with the Punjab government, and our emphasis is on convincing farmers to basically adopt non-burning methods. So there's a whole strategy around that, and there are numerous farmer outreach. Last year, in fact, they even backed a mass media campaign, which is an attitude change campaign. But there was one specific opportunity for which Wavemaker came up with the idea, and I think it's a brilliant idea. The opportunity is that there is a bunch of farmers. We figured through research that there's a bunch of farmers who want to adopt non-burning techniques, but have a series of questions, just don't know who to go to. And the solution that we deployed is something called M-Samvad. I don't know whether the viewers on this session are familiar with M-Samvad, but it's basically a dial-in solution where up to 25,000 people can dial into a number at a pre-assigned time and actually get connected to a central call. So the idea that we went with was to connect professors from Punjab Agriculture University who are experts with farmers, so that farmers have the chance to ask them questions and get clarifications. Last year, basically, since we work with government, our intention was to actually demonstrate to the government that this is a channel worth pursuing. And so therefore we did a very small, I think we did 4 such sessions. the results were very, very encouraging. So just to give you guys a sense, about more than 15,000 farmers over the 4 sessions actually dialed in and listened to a professor giving gyan, which was, which is significant. Second, if you look at M-Samvad, typically brands use it for brand slugs and stuff, which are very short messages, or typically the interaction is less than 5 minutes. But because ours was about disseminating information, we actually went with 30-minute sessions. And the great news is that the data showed that there was a very high retention. Over 50% of the listeners continued beyond the first 10 minutes, which is the big break. About 20-25% of the listeners actually listened to the whole thing. Subsequently, we did some calling out. We did a calling out exercise, and we found to our, we were gratified to find that farmers all responded positively to it. The great news from all of our standpoints, not ours, but all of us who live in the north and struggle with air pollution, is that the Department of Agriculture of Punjab have recognized the relevance of this opportunity, and they've agreed to actually back this. In fact, this year the plan was to start using it from April, which is when a series of farming decisions are taken. Unfortunately, COVID happened. So we are actually going to use the product in September onwards, when around the burning season. And the big difference is, last time we didn't use the core functionality of the product because, well, I was scared. So we didn't do the live thing. So the interaction was not live. This was a recorded piece from a professor talking, answering questions, which we planted. This year, we want to go to the next level and actually run live sessions and see how that works. But really, from our standpoint, the great news is that the Department of Agriculture is actually going to push this hard, which means that there is an engagement between Department of Agriculture and farmers, and hopefully will convince guys not to burn. So as part of an overall strategy, this voice product plays a crucial role because it's probably the most effective way to disseminate information in an interactive form. The same information is also being disseminated over videos and stuff over social media and things. But this interactivity is what we believe is the killer app that this product, M-Samvad, has allowed us. I hope that this thing, Ajay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does work. And I think it's a fantastic example of how you could use technology to do good. And it's such a simple insight, and a big challenge that we in the North face. And even a small difference, if we manage to make, it's a big one.
That's true. That's true. We'll all live longer.
You're, by the way, a hero in my office. So thanks for that. Coming to Anusha. Anusha, are you there?
I'm very much here, Ajay.
Hi. Yo. Anusha, try without the video. I'm guessing I can't really hear you.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit. Anusha is hit by the monsoons in Mumbai. Anusha, are you there? Yeah, I think she's dropped off. I was wanting to ask Anusha about really how she's managing it from a creative perspective, being part of the creative agency that does a lot of work. How are brands asking for more support here, and how she's managing to support them. But I guess it's
Ajay, can you?
Almost.
Ajay, can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Ajay, can
Yes,
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
No, she's there.
No, Anusha, it's okay, Anusha. I think it's fine.
Is it?
Anusha, can't. No, Anusha, we'll move on. We'll move on, Anusha. I think your connection is really bad. Barojit, I'll come to you now again once more because of the experience that you've got, and like you said, you've been across the spectrum. What additional efforts do you believe the ecosystem needs to put together to build for voice to be more effective for marketers? So how can the ecosystem support you better in your efforts to use voice for marketing?
First, I must say I love Mohit's example. I'll speak to him later on learning more of it. I just love the whole purpose behind it and going after it at scale. I think that's the starting point of everything on voice, Ajay. I think on any media interaction or any media deployment, it has to start with an objective. I think where a lot of ideas fail early is that they come with the newest shiny toy in town, and you have to do it because it's there. And what I found is a lot of brand teams get onto that bandwagon very early and lose trust in that platform, and then it becomes a very long haul to bring people back. I think for big brands and even smaller brands for that matter, what's very critical is to really get onto the technology with first what problem are we trying to solve? Are you trying to get, for example, global trend that Ravi mentioned is pretty common that younger audiences increasingly are becoming difficult to get to through broadcast mediums. You need interactive voice-based mediums. Invariably work out much better. Social media does work out better, but audio, because it's a board generation, and with the board generation, the only way you can get in touch with them is on platforms where they're choosing to be with content, like a Ghana as a platform, and that's where they're choosing to listen to the music, or for that kind of people like Joe Morgan, who have taught the world how to monetize his conversations that he's had over 10 years, right? And $7 billion worth of monetization at that. So I think the first point is start with the ecosystem needs to start thinking what problem are we trying to solve. And where I struggle is with a lot of the ecosystem partners. They come in with a pitch to say why this is the big shiny toy. I think the second piece is which Anusha would have possibly thrown greater light on is this creative angle to it. Because you're using only one vector of a memory structure, which is oral, which is essentially sonic. Sonic branding used to be how we used to be for many years as brands. So if you look at Surf Excel, for example, saying Surf ki kharidari mein samjhdari hai, you didn't need anybody else, and the whole imagery would come to your mind very quickly, right? So what are those sonic branding elements that need to get built? How do we process sound? I think there's so much work that needs to get done around that area for brands to really truly understand. The voice that you hear in a Surf Excel ad is invariably has a certain grunge to it, and it's almost like a signature style. Now, how do you really get to those sonic signatures? Very important. I think the third piece that's happening is this piece around. So the first angle was about which problem you're trying to solve. Second is about how to get the creative right for audio. That's where a lot of pieces need to get solved. And the third one is this measurability of impact. And I think we heard various vectors to it, whether it was Mohit's or Ajay's example. Is this what impact you've had? So we've done a reasonably large internal platform called Javelin, which essentially is what we have done is we just put everything into one big massive OBD based setup where we go by district based on uplift, rather based on the over indexation of mobile as a device to reach consumers, and we deploy a large OBD plan every month. I think what we have found over a period of time is that whether we go after, for example, there's a case where we went after households that have got gas connection. Now suddenly Vim is a pretty relevant way to wash your utensils rather than ash, because ash is not available anymore at homes because you move to LPG cylinder. And it's a great way to get Vim into that household, being the largest single brand in India, by the way, not only in the category, in India in terms of absolute levels of top of mind awareness. Now, if you really see, that solve is possible because of OBD and because of layering multiple data sets. And that's the third angle of it. How do we really solve by technology around two pieces, which are supply side problems? First supply side problem is voice, and one angle to voice is language in India. While most languages, we have dialect changing every 100 mile, but what is very clear is that still the only language that we truly cracked is Hindi. Maybe 90% accuracy. Almost all the language is pretty nascent, and for obvious reasons, because of just the scale, the sheer number of people you can reach, and the amount of rural population in the Hindi belt. I think that's one supply side problem that needs to get solved of the ecosystem to be able to really discern dialects, languages, and more than anything. The second piece is content creators who essentially, so you have influencers today at scale on audio, video, you have on social, you have lots of influencers. There are very few who are audio influencers. So ecosystem will evolve. There would be podcasters. There would be rural podcasters who would become voices of the Amin Sianis of today, so to say. Who would be the voices of tomorrow? How do we find them, support them, create them, and how do we make them our own, right? So if I really cut it down to these three vectors, which is content, the second piece is starting with objective, the content, which is how do you get sonic branding, and third piece, supply side technology, and the creators. How do we get this ecosystem together with time to solve these problems at the top of the pyramid where people are choosing to listen to voice, and at the bottom of the pyramid where they have no choice but to listen to voice, right? And I think when that happens, the interactivity of that piece will give us great advantage and really bring and democratize the what do you call the advantages of technology penetration in the country, because we know that as digital penetrations go up, there is a certain addition to GDP. There are numerous numbers floating from 0.5 to 1% added GDP for technology penetration, and I think voice will play a very big role. And I love the example that Mohit had, and I'm sure there's so many other examples that we can empower by voice. So for me, these three vectors will be the big ecosystem drivers, Ajay.
Thanks for that. It's so true. You need to have an objective. Why are you doing it? And if that is clear, and when you have set that objective and you do something, and then you map your success against the objective set, is when you truly know whether what you've done is working. Getting the content right, getting the creators right, all part of the ecosystem, which are extremely important. What I'm glad is at least we are now talking about examples and we're sharing, and that's how it grows. You only learn when you experiment, and I think that has been true of every new thing that has come into play. I remember uh, digital many years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. We used to always have conversations on why do you need to do it? Do you need to do it at all? And only when we made those investments and there was learning, and then there was history to it and examples, and people knew how what kind of effectiveness to expect from an investment, is when it started growing and people started benefiting from it. So it's great that we are actually sharing these examples, and I'm sure in that itself there'll be a lot of learning and a lot of growth in an extremely important mode of communication with our consumer set. Ravi, in Ghana, I know you have a lot of advertising
Ajay,
products.
if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Ajay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I Before my network goes bad again, I'm happy to take your
Yes,
question.
it'd be lovely if you could share with us some experiences on how you've been adapting your creative product and using it for experiments in voice, and some examples that you could share.
Sure, Ajay. I think, creative wise, I think, the number of ideas an agency like us or anybody else, I'm sure, can learn for the space is unimaginable. Ideas are plenty. I think we really need clients to be able to do something with voice, because there is definitely a lot more doubt in a client's mind about penetration levels of voice, and whether it does justice, whether there's a better way to spend money. So there is a lot of questions in a client's mind, but there's so much to do with voice, and I loved everything Mohit said, the whole interactive bit, and that's really the beauty of this. I think voice many different ways. This is really nothing to do with the creative, the brand positioning, or the creative idea. Now, what needs to be done at brand level or at a creative idea level needs to either way happen. Voice is all about manifesting into ways and taking it to consumer. There's just one more way to reach a consumer, a new age consumer who's leaning towards voice, really. You can use voice drive your brand message. You can use voice to support your brand an example, one of our clients, Pantene, the shampoo stands for anti-hair fall, right? While we choose to run TV and many digital campaigns around anti-hair fall for Pantene, can use voice to support that whole space that we are trying to own. We know that a consumer is forever looking and searching for ways to stop hair fall. Hair fall is a big challenge when it comes to women and hair, really. And she can use and really clarify on what the and very easily Pantene can own the space of hair fall, asking those questions, answering those questions, solving hair fall related challenges and issues for the consumer, and integrating the whole advanced formula that Pantene stands for, which is really convenience, right? The consumer can use many home recipes and can use the advanced formula with Pantene because it's the convenience of using that shampoo which still prevents fall. Many ways, I must talk to you about a recent example of using, voice to actually trigger inspiration within creative minds within our agency itself. It's used as a internal comms tool. We built a little solution around prompts through tasks for creative guys around voice, around many other through briefs to, all a day a creative person had to do was really ask this voice and Alexa or would throw a task at this creative person. Not throw at the person, it would also inspire the person and do something really extraordinary with the creative idea. The voice session would joke. It could take questions in return from a creative person and help the creative person to actually think of something. I thought it was a beautiful way to actually get everybody group to start interacting with voice and to feel the power of voice as they develop new ideas. Many things to do. I think this is the space that the new generation is leading to. You spoke about your 14-year-old son. Voice is what comes naturally to all of them, really. And this is the future. So the sooner we how to use it and do extraordinary stuff, the better for us, really.
Wonderful, Anusha. Fantastic that you managed to finally get a little bit of bandwidth, and it was absolutely true to the session. A pure voice message.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Great, great. Thanks a lot. No, as I was asking Ravi about you've got some advertising products on Ghana. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and how it has been used and the effectiveness that you have seen?
Sure. So I think advertising has always been about connecting with consumers on their terms. And with changing user preferences, clearly those terms and conditions are changing. Voice advertising is still nascent, and it's a new way to reach out to people in a very native, intuitive manner. And so we launched voice ads about a year back, and we believe that timing is perfect. We are talking about increasing screen fatigue that we're noticing. I was reading some research in the US. On an average, a person gets about 5,000 ads on his mobile phone a day. Increasing ad avoidance. So, and most ads are unidimensional. Voice ads, voice dialogue ads allow users to speak with ads. Literally having an emotional conversation with a brand. It's a two-way messaging, and I think our research kind of says that people who are likely to remember and respond better when when something is verbally stated to them, and that kind of helps us really empower that piece of communication for our brands. We're also kind of solving the click-throughs on audio ads. So, typically audio ads will always have someone will have to open the phone and click, but with voice, intuitively you can reach to a landing page for a brand or go to a playlist, and and in this manner, it kind of you gain more insights. So over the past about a year, I mean, we have been selling pizzas and chocolates and banking solutions as well as cars. So different categories have experimented: QSR, tech, auto, CPGs, and we believe that it's a really frictionless environment to reach brands and users. You can immediately measure an intent with a yes or a no, or the moment a user is interacting, you kind of measure is an immediate response to an ad. It's completely less intrusive, and a brand gets to get 100% share of voice. So I think these are really compelling factors for voice, ads to be considered as a strong and powerful medium. And I'll be happy to share case studies if anyone's interested of some of the campaigns that we've done.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Ravi. And we've hit time, so we'll end now. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your time, Mohit, Ajay, Gauravjeet, Anusha, Ravi. Thank you so much. Lovely insights there. Have a very good evening. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Ajay. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And wow, that was amazing. Let me quickly once again thank Ajay for being the panelist, and of course Anusha, Ajay once again, Gaurav, Mohit, and Ravi for being so kind and joining us. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be moving on to the next session. But before we get to that, once again, let me remind you about a hashtag. It's hashtag Voice Marketing Conference. If you enjoy the content, I'm absolutely sure that you would spread the word on the social networks using this very hashtag. All right, so let's quickly move on to the next session, and it's time for some crystal gazing. Our next session is with Sarah Salter, Head of Innovation Wavemaker, who will tell us what the future of voice in marketing is. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to hopefully manage to pull up my screen. 1 second. Sorry, bear with me. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's visible, Sarah. You can take up the screen now.
Okay, perfect. So, firstly, thank you very much for having me. Super excited to be here today. I am very much going to talk to kind of the future of voice and share with you how we're seeing the future of voice and how we're very much kind of seeing its future in marketing and advertising. So I think in the past, marketers have very much kind of given voice technology a respectable nod. But this year, we very much expect to see a shift where voice and conversational AI will play a much more central role in those marketing plans. And this is very much kind of driven by a few factors. Essentially, we're entering a new era in voice with two key drivers converging to create this big moment in time. The rise of intelligent applications and also AI that creates a more personalized web experience. And then meeting this paradigm shift that is voice as the next stage of user interface. I'm sure many of you have seen this happen in your own households, but the pandemic has very much accelerated the adoption of new technology at home by potentially 3 to 4 years. Many researchers stating that families will become much more reliant on voice-enabled devices over the next 5 years. And voice growth is very much coming from kind of what was talked about earlier, this intuitive nature and the rapid adoption of technology amongst younger audiences, many of whom are growing up with assistants being spoken to multiple times around their house. And a lot of research has shown that parents are now putting voice assistants in babies' bedrooms from birth. We're also seeing, as we touched on earlier, 7-year-olds essentially using voice to select what they're going to watch, search for information, or even ask what time dinner will be ready. I have a 6-year-old son, and he already chooses voice over dials, controls, and buttons. And he picks voice for its speed, its convenience, and because he genuinely believes that Alexa is part of our family. His conversations with voice assistants are very natural and intuitive. He'll even argue with Alexa, and he'll keep reframing his question until he gets an answer. Whereas my conversations are as a digital native, they're very search focused and they're very command driven. I might ask Alexa to play a song, whereas my son would ask Alexa to have a dance with him and pick a song that they both like. Just kind of showing how he very much speaks to this technology in a completely different voice native way. A lot of people also, a lot of children also believe that Alexa is a real person. A lot of research has shown that people think there's actually a real person sitting inside that voice device. And what to expect? So by 2030, we believe that every brand will have a personalized voice, and that conversational marketing will truly be the future of customer experience.
Sarah, I'm sorry to intervene. Your screen is not completely visible. Can you try and reshare it?
Yes, 1 second. Sorry.
No, not a problem. I'm sorry to intervene, but
oh no, you're fine. It might be easier. It might be easier. I had this issue earlier. If you guys are able to share it, if possible. I know you also have it.
Yes.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you, and sorry to kind of pass to you doing this. We were on slide 6 essentially. Perfect, thank you. So as I mentioned, studies have anticipated voice assistants becoming much more conversational, joining in with family conversations more naturally, but also with personalized content, being able to make dinner recommendations, being able to pick brand preferences for people. And if you go on to the next slide, what's going to be really interesting is that voice will essentially play a role in every aspect of our lives. We'll see voice-powered interaction expand beyond the car and smartphone and smart home to new areas of mobility and other unexpected areas. Voice will be in retail, in transit, in travel, and the public will become much more accustomed to choosing voice as one of several ways to interact with a product. So within the same product, people will discover that sometimes it's easier to speak, while other times it's easier to touch or type. They'll realize that voice and the option to use voice is not just a novelty. And the results will be that there will be even more products that will be voice enabled and will allow people to interact in a manner that suits them. Next, essentially, the net effect is an emerging channel that is already mass. I'm based in the UK, and in the UK alone, we have 86% of the UK public having used a voice assistant in the last 6 months. And we're seeing huge stats globally from this increase. So on the next slide, I'm going to just kind of touch on essentially 5 of the biggest trends and emerging technology in voice innovation. That's the ubiquity of voice, touching on the growth of voice social, its application in retail and voice commerce, multi-sensory experiences, and going into some kind of deep learning and synthetics. I'm very much going to kind of touch top line on these areas because obviously they're vast, and hopefully give you some good examples. So next, essentially, voice will be available everywhere, every home, every product. It will become standard on appliances. What we're seeing from voice manufacturers is brands like Amazon have already brought Alexa to property managers. They're aiming to have entire homes that are smart home enabled and make it easier for property managers to set up and maintain their smart homes. But perhaps the biggest opportunity is voice on the go. And the mobility industry is very much on the cusp of a revolution. Electrification, connected and autonomous driving, and shared mobility. And what we're seeing is these automakers investing in their own voice-controlled assistants. However, research is showing that car owners are increasingly preferring familiar voice assistants, like the ones they have in their home, over those that are specifically designed by automakers. And we're seeing just this huge increase in AI-powered in-vehicle voice assistants, and the possibilities to utilize that time whilst driving and connecting on the go are endless. And then finally, we're also seeing voice integrated into applications, integrated into websites. This example is Snapchat, where you can now search for your lens via voice. And essentially, it will make those complicated website mobile navigations much simpler. It will kind of go from being very much a nice to have, which brands are looking at it right now, to an expectation. And it will also allow marketers to focus much more on context, so how and when they communicate. And on the next slide, I'm just going to play you an example. And this is essentially a product that we have developed with Nationwide Bank. And it's a hyper-local voice skill. And this voice skill was very much designed with auto in mind. And it's the idea essentially that whilst you're on the go, that's the time when you're keeping your eye out for new properties that you might want to buy. If you don't mind pressing play, I'll let the video do the talking.
Alexa, open Nationwide Local Voices.
Welcome to Nationwide Local Voices from Nationwide Building Society. Find out what life is really like in 20 of Bristol's most diverse and vibrant neighbourhoods. You can hear from people who live in Bristol about the culture, community and the places in their neighbourhoods.
Hi, I'm Ben and I live in Montpellier.
Southville has a lot of family. One of the best things about Kingstown is there's so many places to go out in the evening and meet people.
So we moved to Brislington about 17 years ago when we had our first.
A lot of the traders at this market, they're local people that are setting up their own businesses. It's the first outdoor market that North West has ever had.
Thanks for listening to Nationwide Local Voices from Nationwide Building Society. Goodbye.
So just an example of how we're really kind of thinking context first and looking at the future of audio in car and voice in car. And now moving on to kind of one of the other big trend areas, and this is the future of social media. And we truly believe that the future of social media is audio and voice. I've evidenced this kind of on the left-hand side by the rise in voice-only platforms and also the recent purchase of Locker Room by Spotify. Voice content essentially is perceived as being more personal and more informal than text. People can create more content at a much faster rate. So the average person speaks 3 times as fast as they can type. So it's a great way to be able to put more content out into the world. So why is this use case taking off? I think humans stuck at home during quarantine, readily available smartphones and apps, the likes of Clubhouse, for example, and the desire for human connection beyond text, and probably the fatigue of just too many Zoom calls as well. Essentially, there's a huge opportunity in this space and an opportunity for brands to be first to market through emerging ad opportunities. So sponsored audio influencers, live voice commerce, promoted rooms, and content that could be extended from social platforms into branded podcasts potentially. The opportunities are really endless in social, and it's just a huge moment to be able to kind of experiment. The next area I want to just touch on is retail. So going on to the next slide, voice essentially will replace touch in many situations due to the health concerns post the pandemic. The challenges of the pandemic are unleashing completely new use cases for voice-first systems, from the obvious kind of touchless functions to much more friendly food ordering, voice will just continue to rise throughout this year. It will make its way into retail stores, restaurants, and any facility where voice can reduce friction and promote that contactless transaction. The other area, next slide please, in retail is essentially shopping, and voice will essentially change the way that we shop. And a great example of this is Alexa and Whole Foods. So essentially what you do is you would put in your buds or through your phone, talk to Alexa. And this is an example where essentially Alexa will guide you through a Whole Foods market. It will tell you where to find the products on your shopping list, or it will help inspire you and tell you where to find the ingredients on the shelf for a specific dish. And I think this is a really great example for marketers to be really thoughtful about how they can kind of build those in retail voice experiences by building those helpful, inspiring audio nudges in that path to purchase and combining those physical and digital retail experiences. And on the next slide, I just wanted to touch on how also we can open up new shopping environments. And I touched on the car use case before, and I think it's a very early example, but it really is only just getting started. Being able to shop for groceries, order takeout from the car creates completely new environments where people will be able to shop. And as I mentioned, almost most major car manufacturers are adding in-car voice assistants. And the Amazon Alexa Auto, which you can see on this picture, is equipping older vehicles with voice assistants. So essentially you can soon order the flowers you forgot for someone's birthday, place a bet on a big game, or purchase an audiobook impulsively. And you can do all of that without taking your eyes off the road, and also filling that dead time, where you're just driving often and looking for something to interact with and do. It is a huge, huge opportunity for voice retail. Next, please. Then kind of going into the area of multisensory, sound is well known for either entertaining or providing helpful factual information, but also sound is feeling. It plays a really important role in adding depth and dimension to the digital world, and it can also help enhance our real world experiences. Up until now, the digital world is predominantly through visual. And there's a great article that Microsoft have written about where this sensory imbalance of just being visual can cause us to feel overwhelmed, distracted, depressed. And this is actually an opportunity to tap into the unique way that voice, sound can evoke a feeling, a memory, an emotion, and help capture and hold our attention in much more interesting ways. Next slide, please, is a great example, essentially, of capturing that full attention, is an example from Darkfield Radio. And it's an experience that's been created just primarily using voice and audio. And essentially this experience, I watched a YouTube video, somebody described the experience, and they said through sound alone, they felt like they could feel the breath of someone on the back of their neck. Super creepy, but very, very powerful. And I think very much like the early days of other media, we need to be exploring, experimenting, and inventing new combinations of sensory experience and finding new ways to connect the digital world with our physical and emotional worlds. We need to develop a creative process and methodology to help us design across the senses and across all devices. And then touching on my last area on the next slide, please. And this is very much around deep learning and synthetics. We are already seeing a huge number of brands explore synthetic technology, from personalized messaging to personalized assistants. And this is an example from Nestle, where they essentially created their own cookie coach to solve the problem of customers getting different advice on how to bake the perfect cookie from their customer assistants. And this example on the right-hand side from Lay's shows how future customer experiences need to feel bespoke and personal. They essentially created a chat interface that would allow you to have a dialogue between the customer and Lionel Messi, the footballer. And these synthetics and these kind of personalized voice experiences are only going to grow. And if you could go to the next slide and just play a very short clip of this. Really, I think where the opportunity potentially lies is in the incredible advancement of synthetic voices. And this video essentially, next slide please, shows this huge advancement in synthetic voice and the emotion and the realism that can be built into it. If you just maybe play the first 20 seconds just so you can kind of get a feeling for it, that would be great. Is it not allowing you to play? No, it's not allowing you to play. Let me see if it will allow. Let me see if it will allow me to play. 1 second. Can you see my screen? There we go. Let's just see. Sorry, it's not allowing me to do it. 1 second. Oh no, it's failing to start. Sorry. Never goes as well as we want, is it? 1 second. Let me just try and come out of this. Okay, if you guys share your screen again, you should just be able to hear my sound for the video, which might work. Given its audio. Yeah.
I can still hear voices. Sometimes, if I'm lucky, I hear her. And it's like she's right here with us. Her warmth, her love. And it's her. I just don't understand.
So just an example, hopefully you all heard that okay. I'll just try and come out of here now. The computer is not playing ball. Okay, great. If you don't mind, the deck back up. So essentially there are 5 opportunities to achieve an unfair growth advantage in voice. Firstly, we need to focus on the context. So very much like we've done with Nationwide, what are those moments where people are going to be needing your brand and where can you be there for them? We need to utilize test and learn through emerging social ad opportunities. Social voice is huge and nobody is yet taking full advantage of it. Building helpful or inspiring voice nudges into that path to purchase. Defining how voice should make the audience feel and not just think. And owning a persona with a branded voice assistant and thinking about bringing in synthetic voices. And finally, essentially, who better to kind of quote in our summary, if you don't mind going to the last slide, than Vanessa Go at Spotify, who really kind of states why audio has and always will be such a powerful way to connect with audiences. Essentially, you can close your eyes, but you cannot close your ears. Thank you very much, and sorry for the slight technical hitches. They always happen, right?
Thank you so much, Sarah, and what a wonderful session that was. So this small glitch in the digital world is what the transition is all about, and we can't really do anything about that, but wonderful session nonetheless. Thank you. All right, so we'll be moving on now to the next session, and this is an interesting one. But before we get to that, let me quickly remind you once again, the hashtag is Voice Marketing Conference. Please use it and spread the word around. Time now for our technology leaders panel. They will discuss how voice technology and voice-enabled solutions have evolved in light of increasing numbers and usage of smartphones, expansion of existing applications, acceleration of voice adoption in AI-powered applications, and increase in new voice applications. The panelists are Anil Nair, CEO, VMLY&R, Dilip RS, Country Manager, Alexa Skills, Voice Service and Mobile, Amazon, Jayesh Ulatil, General Manager, India, Mobi, Kumar Rangarajan, Co-founder and Obsessive Director at Slang Labs, Neha Varjatia, Marketing Head, Platforms and Devices, Google India, Shankar Jairaman, SVP Products, Geo Platforms, and the host for the session is Tushar Vyas, President, Group M South Asia. So I'll hand it over to Tushar for this amazing session for you all.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Ravin. And hello, everyone, and hope you are keeping well. I'd also like to thank audience and my co-panelists. I think we have a pretty interesting 90 odd minutes where various facets of sort of voice has been sort of covered, right? Be it in form of interactive bot or assistant or getting embedded into various devices. It can be also like a utility kind of environment, or it can go up to convenient kind of environment. So the spectrum of utility we have seen in the last 90 odd minutes. And voice is basically powered by strong underlying technology like AI, ML, or natural language processing, right? So in this panel, basically, we are going to focus more on the intersection of product, voice, and marketing. So that's a area we are going to cover. If you look at broadly, basically, and this is something which we covered in a report also, we are going into two directions. One ecosystem which is getting developed around entire connected ecosystem and more to do with the smartphone, smart speaker, and around those areas. While there is a similarly very interesting ecosystem which is getting developed around feature phone and building a utility which is more into a rural kind of environment and bringing very, very interesting sort of live support to professional support to sort of something which is very sort of utilitarian kind of activities one can do around that, right? So it's a very interesting spectrum of work which is happening in a voice environment. And today we are lucky to have a sort of panel which is representing basically all facets of this ecosystem. So we have got a representation from telecom, we have got a platform, we have got an enabler ecosystem which is powering this entire environment, right? So really glad to see the full ecosystem being represented here. So let me straight away jump in interest of time, and let me start with Shankar, and Shankar represent Geo Platform. He leads the product at Geo Platform. Shankar would like to understand basically where does voice fit into sort of product stack at a Geo Platform, and what are the merits? How do you see a voice playing a role in your ecosystem?
Hi Tushar, first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to participate in this conference. At Geo, we strongly believe voice is an important medium for customer engagement. We have been integrating voice AI-based technologies across multiple products of ours. Be it our homegrown voice assistant on our fiber-to-home set-top box service, where voice assistant plays a crucial role in searching for content, interactivity, etc. on the TV. Then there's our assistant on our feature phones. Then there is voice search within GeoMart, and also the first of its kind interactive video bot service that's available on MyGeo that enables our customers to interact with brands as well as celebrities over a video call. Voice will continue to play a key role for interactivity in all our upcoming apps and device variants as well, which you will see in the coming days. And of course, if you look as a telco, we believe voice communication and automation using voice for customer care is a critical component that we are continuing to invest, that we have invested in and will continue to invest in the future as well. All our services are built, especially all the voice interaction, are built with the ML algorithm that ensure a great level of accuracy across different languages. Because understanding not just the speech, but also the intent and the sentiment is very key to ensure the conversations flow in the right direction. So, and our focus has not just been the urban market. The urban market is used to assist that I've been seeing earlier, right? That used to voice assistants and smart speakers, voice on the mobile device as well as the smart speakers. But it's the rural and the semi-urban market, and also the senior citizens and elderly people in the urban market that is an important base where we see is important to make sure that we level up on the accuracy front and make sure that our services are available in multiple languages. Today, we have our voice services, voice AI available in 10 plus languages, and we are looking to increase this to many more, as we go forward. And so these are, I covered some of the some of the products where we have integrated voice. We've also been doing pilots. We have in our Geo Games application. We have games. We have done pilots with games where there's interactivity using voice, where you have to respond during voice, using voice to level up in that particular game. We have enabled voice search as a key feature across our browser, across our Geo Cinema, Geo TV, and other applications as well. So yes, voice has been playing an important role, and I see that it will continue to play a critical role in all our products.
Is there any sort of key point on a sort of user preference or any insight which you gathered in a sort of last few months? Is there anything you'd like
Sure,
to
I can talk about at least one example. In our when I spoke about the voice assistant that's powering our set-top box, right? And what we see is that the application is being used regularly by 75 to 80% of our user base. And this is not just for, and a lot of them are power users. And this is not just for searching for content. I mean, on a set-top box, primarily it's for content consumption, or at best you will probably be gaming, right? But you're not just looking for content, but there are also seasonal queries that we see. And these seasonal queries include like looking for a cricket score, for a weather update, etc., etc. Now, we have additionally built algorithms that recognize customer profile through voice tonality, overlay that with additional demography parameters, and which help us generate interesting insights. And these interesting insights include adoption of Indian languages. While we started with English over the last few months, we have been adding more and more languages. As I said, we are close to 10 languages now that are currently live. So one of the insights we see is the semi-urban population as well as the senior citizens prefer to communicate using using Hindi, using their native tongue essentially. So in fact, today close to 20% of our usage is in Hindi, Tamil, or Telugu, which is a direction for our product as well to make sure that we continuously improve the accuracy and the sentiment analysis and how best we can enable the conversation. In fact, I can go to the extent we do get queries while the language is set to Hindi. We do get queries in Bhojpuri, for example. While we don't support Bhojpuri today, but that's an interesting insight for us to see what the market demands and how we can tune our product offering accordingly. And there's also this other interactive voice bot that's available as part of MyGeo. While a lot of interest is related to celebrity bots, we also built this bot for health check called My Doctor Me, where it is currently available on the smartphone, but we're also looking at extending it to our feature phone user base as well. So yes, we see good amount of usage at all our touch points, and we will continue to invest in this and be the best possible experience wherever we have voice playing a role.
Thanks, Shankar. This is pretty insightful. Let me go to Neha. And Neha, you guys have a sort of bird's eye view of maybe a large part of Indian internet ecosystem, right? So, what are the key voice-related trend you are seeing across your ecosystem and broader market level?
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Tushar. I think it's a very exciting conversation to be a part of for sure. We definitely see that it's a rapidly evolving phenomenon, which is voice and technology, and it will actually fundamentally change the way people interact with technology as we move forward. In fact, we believe that India will actually leapfrog when it comes to voice, and skip typing and move to voice as interacting with technology, similar to what we sort of saw with mobile usage when we became a mobile-first internet user market. So just to give you some perspective, when we launched Google Assistant less than 4 years back, in 2017, and since then, actually, we've seen unprecedented growth in India for voice and for our assistant. Now, India is one of the biggest markets for voice and Google Assistant globally. And Hindi is actually the second biggest language for the assistant after English. So that is the kind of adoption we're seeing for voice as a medium here. And it's not actually just on digital assistant, but we're seeing similar trends happen on Google search. We're seeing similar trends happen on YouTube. For instance, we are seeing almost like a 3x year-on-year growth for search queries, voice queries on search in India. Right, so people are using voice to sort of interact with technology across our platforms, even on YouTube, which is a trend actually very unique to India. So definitely India will sort of leapfrog for sure. Why is this happening? I think a couple of points. Sarah has covered it. Shankar sort of referred to it, but actually there is a very inherent need to adopt voice. Right, it's very simple. It's one of those technologies where there's no user manual needed, and we're actually seeing it's not about early adopters. This is one of those technologies which is defying the early adopter phenomenon, because it is the new internet users, it is the more senior users like Shankar spoke about, who are actually taking very well to voice, right? The second thing we're seeing is, being a mobile-first country, we do see about 60% users use voice on their smartphones. It is ubiquitous. You can go across, you can have actions on voice. And in terms of use cases, we're also seeing, varied use cases. It can be something as simple as basic information, around weather, news, to complex queries around recipes. Entertainment is very big. So right from like play my favorite song, or show me my favorite video. And also what's happening is it's almost becoming like a conversation, right? Like we're seeing a lot of fun stuff happen, like tell me a joke, but also we've seen queries like, will you marry me? Right, people are actually asking that to the Google Assistant, and Google has actually received more than 4.5 lakh marriage proposals in India. So it's really become like a fun medium of interaction. It's becoming more conversational. And it's very easy to use, which is driving this technology. And lastly, I'd say, it's really the Indic languages. I think the fact that currently, if you look at our internet user base, 72% of the internet users prefer a language other than English. And if we just look at English and Indic languages, English has about 26 letters. Yeah, right. And if I compare that to Hindi, which has about more than 50 letters, then you have to add matras. It's a fairly complex task to sort of key that in on a keyboard, right? But if you were to type, if you were to speak it out, it's actually 3 times faster to speak than to type. So it's intrinsically coming to people. And in fact, on Hindi, for our Hindi queries, we saw a 400% year-on-year growth on search. So really, Indic is driving voice adoption as well in the country. To give you an instance, last year, in 2019, actually not last year, but we saw about 100 million cricket queries in Hindi, which was received by the assistant. So people are really taking this on, and in fact, as we move forward from here, and more Indians are getting online, we will have the JioPhone Next coming up. Shankar is here. We'll have the JioPhone Next coming up, which will also offer a very voice-first experience in multiple languages for the users. We know that 90%, if not more, of the new internet users will prefer an Indic language. The voice adoption will grow very, very phenomenally as we move forward. So very exciting times. I think we have, while we're seeing growth, but there is much more to come as we move forward.
Yeah, you made an interesting point. Just wanted to check if you have a sort of more insight on, is there any difference between the Indic language user and the English language user? So are you seeing any pattern or any interesting insight there? How they...
We are definitely seeing the adoption more with Indic language users. I think it's the ease and simplicity of usage. For the early internet users, smartphone is the way they will start interacting with the smartphone will primarily be through voice. All the in-app actions of being able to play a song, book a that's going to front it. And I think from a more evolved internet user standpoint, of course, it's going to be those connected devices. So the smart home category, smart speakers, speaking to the TV. So we are going to see voice emerge in multiple forms. But I think the distinction we're seeing is for the new internet users, it's going to be the interaction with the smartphone. For the evolved internet users, we will see a more sort of connected devices usage happening as we move forward.
Thank you. Pretty interesting that. And Let me go to Deepak. Deepak, I think Sarah has done half the job for you in terms of half the example she was talking about was Alexa. But what I found fascinating was the spectrum of integration and the sort of breadth you provide. So if you can just talk about that, basically, what's the kind of use case you are looking at, and what kind of integration you are looking at driving, and if there is anything specific to India you would like to highlight here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tushar, for the opportunity. I think if we start with our vision, right, I think like Sarah alluded to, so did Neha, it's about how do we make voice ubiquitous and available for customers to be accessed everywhere, right? If it's only in one corner of your house, it will not take off as a technology, right? It needs to be accessible everywhere. So in lieu of that, we are trying to see how can we increase the footprint of any voice assistant, in our case, Alexa. So we started with just two brands in India, like two smart speaker brands, which are non-Echo brands, right? Non-Amazon brands. Now we have 100 plus brands in India alone who have voice integrated in the device, right? And these are across categories. Today, you could access voice or Alexa on a smart speaker, like a Boat speaker or a Zebronic speaker. Headphones now come with voice integrated. Just 2 weeks ago, we had two smartwatches launched by Boat and Xiaomi, which had Alexa integrated. Neha talked about TV, so did Shankar. So we have Samsung, LG, those kind of brands on TV, set-top boxes, laptops. Automobiles has picked up a big way in the US, where we have General Motors signed up with a voice assistant. Like my personal favorite, which I've been begging my team for a test device, is a Lamborghini Huracan. So they had an Alexa integrated car, which is like become very popular. I remember going back, talking about quirky such devices. I remember going back to CES a couple of years back. They even had toothbrushes and commodes which are integrated with Alexa, right? So that is like the extent of voice assistants. And no matter where you go, we have a mobile phone, you have a speaker, you have your earphone, you should be able to access your voice assistant very easily. I think that's the vision we have. The second part is these are all still devices which have Alexa integrated in it, right? We also want to make sure there are other devices who are compatible with voice assistants. So I think Neha talked about smart home becoming a big thing. And we've seen that in India. Like 2 3 years back when we were launching, a smart bulb would cost 2,500 rupees in India. Like obviously the barrier to entry is very high, right? Now it's as low as 500 rupees. And I believe that entire smart home evolution has happened because of the technology of voice, right? Customers can easily sit in one corner of the house and control their TV, AC, any plug point, air purifier, set-top boxes, all through voice, right? And hence we are seeing all of these categories take off in a big way. In our case alone, only with Alexa, we're seeing about 8.6 lakh interactions per day with smart devices, right? So that's the kind of volume we are seeing. And if I look at where else can customers access voice, right? Sarah talked about the Whole Foods example, where you can put in like a retail experience, where you can put in your earbuds and walk through the store. We launched Alexa integration on the Amazon shopping app itself, right? We have billions of customers every day coming to Amazon shopping app. And through that alone, today we have 5 lakh plus customers asking something or the other on Amazon shopping app for better deals, for where is their order, for making payments of their mobile bills, whatever it be. Lakhs of customers are every day asking via voice alone on Amazon shopping app. That's how prevalent it's become today.
Very interesting. And how many proposal Alexa's getting, marriage proposal Alexa's getting?
Yeah, actually, the same thing it is. I don't think people are like favoring Alexa or Google one way or the other. They just propose either of the two, or like, I love you, I want to marry you, are one of the most common utterances. I resonate there with Neha.
And what kind of skills are popular? Is there a specific trend you are seeing in India, genre or any unique skills which is getting popular?
Yeah, so when we started off, we wanted to not just work with big brands, but also look at indie developers and build like an entire like a voice skills or app ecosystem of sorts. So we have like almost 100,000 plus developers start building skills for Alexa in India. About 30,000 skills which are already published for the Indian customers. The popular ones are like, if you see the obvious ones, right, which are very heavy in content play. You can talk about music. Devotion is very popular in India. We saw it as a trend compared to all other locales. In India, people asking for Hanuman Chalisa, Sai Darshan, video, audio of it is very popular in India. Kids absolutely love interacting with voice assistant. Somebody talked about it earlier as well, where people want to, our kids want to ask for rhymes, animal sounds, like whatever they can talk to, they've got a companion there. Recipes has become very popular. We have like Sanjeev Kapoor recipes and the likes. So customers trying to use Alexa in their homes to say, how can I find out new innovative ways to cook? News, obviously, which lends itself very well. But it's not just about these big brands, right? There are a lot of indie, smaller developers who have built very cool, like a 20 questions game, or like a game with animal sounds, or like a simple, like a sleep sound, right? Help me sleep, and you get a nice relaxing ocean music to play, right? And because it is so convenient, I don't have to like tap 3 clicks and go to an audio service to listen to music. I can just do it through voice. That's what makes this very popular.
Thanks. Pretty interesting, Dilip. And this is, the ecosystem which is now at a scale. There's a sort of good amount of consumer engagement which is happening, and this is, I think, these are the sort of indicator which is right for brand to be there. So, Anil, what's your view in terms of how to give a brand a voice in this environment, and how brand can sort of start leveraging it?
Yes. Hello, everybody, and it's fantastic listening to Sarah and all my fellow panelists. What is fascinating is I think we are on the cusp of something huge. And till now, you interacted through word or through type, and after that through video, and all of us felt that that was the biggest thing till voice came on the scene, and the sheer speed at which voice is kind of growing is mind-boggling in that sense. The interesting thing here is, if you look at it from a brand's perspective, brands have always struggled to have a deep, meaningful relationship with consumers, and voice actually allows you that. Because, like Sarah said, there is an element of feeling in voice which is not there in video, which is not there in in the written word or the read word in that sense. It also brings it as close to one-on-one human interaction as possible. So your brand can literally take a human form when interacting with the consumer. The other interesting thing is technology exists for convenience, and we all we eventually want to take it to the ultimate level of convenience, and therefore interesting thing about voice is the entire multitasking aspect of it, the entire hands-free aspect of it. And last but not the least, it's about curation, because this is a one-on-one kind of a medium. And what is interesting here is there is a degree of personalization where brands can actually talk to Tushar as differently as talking to Anil and give them a highly personalized experience. So if you ask me, one is a high degree of feeling and empathy, and second is a high degree of personalization, and the third is convenience. And all these three put together is like a winning thing for any brand and I would strongly exhort all brands to explore this medium as fast as possible if they want to win in the marketplace.
Yeah, if you talk to many of sort of all these, they will talk about the concept of a sonic brand in audio, right? And this goes back all the way to like a radio days, and many still remember that Titan's sonic tune, that ting ting ting. So basically, it's wherever you are, that sort of brings that brand memories back, bring the brand connection back, right? So how do you see this evolving in this space, Anil? Is it sonic brands are going to elevate it to next level? What are the dimensions?
Tushar, when we interact with anything, we look at the five senses. And in marketing and branding, the sense of audio has been subdued till now, and which is where now with all these devices and this technology popping up, we marketers will have to look at this very, very seriously. The interesting thing is this is one of the most emotive of the senses in that sense, and therefore imagine marketing has been happening with one sense shut in that sense, and now the sense will have to open up, and which basically means like how you have Alexa skills, marketers will need to kind of develop voice skills as part of their evolution. And one big part of it is, you have a toothpaste, for example. You know how the toothpaste tastes like. You can touch the toothpaste, you can see the toothpaste, but you now need to start hearing the toothpaste as well. And as much as this is alien to people, but then one will need to kind of a very classic example is Britannia. When they did that entire eat healthy, think better. The sound of that little Britannia, the spoon kind of touching the mug, is firmly imprinted, and for me this is hugely subliminal, and it works at multiple deep levels, and this is something that we've all grown upon, and sound has, I think, one of the greatest imprints, more than sight. You may forget things, but you will never forget like a great song or a great tune that is kind of embedded in your head. So yes, brands will have to look at the sonic branding side of their brand. It's not to say that every brand needs it, every category needs it, but brands and categories that need it will need to kind of delve into this much faster.
Very interesting. Moving on to Jayesh, how do you see basically voice advertising proposition? Is it do you see more like advertising, or do you see more like a solutioning or enabler uh, ecosystem?
Right, Tushar. Thanks a lot for getting me in the panel. A lot of good amount of information has already flown in the panel. I resonate a lot with what Anil was saying. So voice is something which is very personalized. It is something which gives you that experience which probably the other senses don't give. And one of the reasons, and an anecdotal example that I would like to take is a drink that we have. We always say cheers. And the story goes that there are two stories to it, but I'll narrate the story which is more relevant over here, which is basically that you can sense it, you can smell it, you can taste it, but you can't hear this drink, and you say cheers to acknowledge that. Anyways, leaving that aside, the one key thing that we all, I mean, I'm sure some of the earlier panels or some of the speakers would have touched upon it. Audio versus video as a senses, the amount of signals that are being sent by one of our senses, which is the eye, is about 100 times more than the amount of signals that the audio or audio sense sends. So what it effectively means is that there is a lot of information which is passed. And if you look at it, if you can really look at what you're seeing right now, I'm talking to everybody here, you probably have 1,000 images that you're seeing right now, but just one voice that you're hearing, and that's mine, right? And that is exactly the power of audio in terms of advertising. So while in case of video, or for that matter print, the amount of clutter that you have to cut through to put across a communication, a messaging to your consumer is much higher. Whereas in the case of audio, at max you can hear two sounds, or rather you can comprehend two different conversations going on at max. That's it, not more than that. So it gives you a clutter-free environment. So cutting the clutter becomes a very important piece that audio advertising does for you. The second one is we all alluded to the different connected devices and how you are interacting with it. So that's something called the psychology of power. What's the psychology of power? Essentially, I think humans have this thing in them that you have power over somebody when you're able to order something out. Like for example, you're ordering Alexa to show me something, or throw up a music. It's that psychology of power. So that interaction has some amount of satisfaction that is given to the human mind. That is something which we need to keep in mind. The last one, of course, is the interactivity and the personalization that multiple people, right from Anil and I think Neha and Sarah in her previous talk also was talking about, the personalized experience that is there. That is very important. Now, having said that, you have multiple touch points, and you still don't need to forget, or we shouldn't forget the fact that one of the most reached mediums, or rather the medium which has the most reach in India is still audio. AR covers close to about 99% of the Indian population. No other medium can cover that, even imagine to cover that right now. Maybe smartphones will reach there, feature phones will reach there, but not yet. So one is the regular content that is being consumed and the propensity to throw in a messaging through that content. The second one is to actually look at audio video experience, and how can you tweak the audio experience in that particular interaction to give the importance that it requires and make sure that the interactivity is much more. And then of course these two things, there will be several other touch points that you will have. Now, coming to answer your point specifically, Tushar, if you look at audio, it can both be a standalone medium for communication, which is in the case of any content, and being advertising as a pre-roll or post-roll in a podcast or a audio stream or whatever. Or it could be a very interactive and enhancing medium, which can be a solution-led medium. So both are possible, and it is for the brand to understand and utilize it for the need that they require, the solution that they, or the problem that they are solving for. So that's how I would look at it. One major advantage that I would like to point out, or actually three, is basically the fact that audio, unlike in the case of video or normal display ads, I'm talking from an advertising point of view, the brand safety is very high. You are not compromising on the brand. Two, there is no fake calls, or sorry, not fake calls, the wrong clicks, or there's no accidental clicks. Whatever interaction is happening is an intentional interaction. And then, of course, you can't have a ad blocking because it is something which is on request. So audio definitely is something which
most of when we provide a voice assistant, it's always they can use touch also and voice also, and it's always an option. But then people use voice, seem to prefer to use voice and then don't go back to using touch again. And finally, the pattern that another thing that I'm seeing, like people following a lot of repetitive tasks. This is leading to more frequent purchase, because like a lot of repetitive tasks, if you cut down on the effort time it takes to do the repetitive tasks, especially when you're buying, like in a big basket, you want to now buy a lot of items. By making voice enabled, it seems to increase frequent purchases. We don't have data on this yet, but anecdotally, my wife, who's a doctor, now she refuses to do her shopping on the big basket app until as I am home, because only on my phone, which is an Android phone, has our voice assistant inside it. So she keeps waiting for it. Right? So that's another interesting pattern that we're seeing. Now I think that's the high level pattern that we're able to see.
So do you see a voice replacing touch? And you made a very interesting point.
Yeah, so we don't see voice replacing touch. Our whole belief is like voice will coexist with touch, right? Like I think like because both have its own benefits, right? Like voice is fast, it does not have any dimensional. It's like zero dimensional. Right? It has no dimensional restrictions, but it is very ephemeral. Information does not persist as it does on a screen. It just comes and goes away. But touch is restrictive, but the information, but others used to do things sometimes faster, and it is right there on the screen. So our whole thing is like if something can be done with like less than 3 clicks, in 2 clicks or 1 or 2 clicks, it can be done. Touch is actually much faster. The information is right there on your screen. But anything beyond that, voice starts to become a much better mechanism.
You are making very interesting point, and once you move into those kind of hybrid journey, the way you look at UX and some of the design of website and app will also start fundamentally changing, right? In the implication on a sort of multiple area, are very interesting point. Just let me go back to sort of Jayesh and continue on the advertising piece. I just wanted to see what's a form and what kind of form factor of advertising you see in this. Is it going to be like a pre-roll, mid-roll kind of thing which you have seen in video, or is there a sort of different ways to reach out consumer in?
Yeah, Tushar. So essentially, like I said earlier, the kind of medium or the touch point also defines the kind of format that we can use. We obviously have the plain vanilla, 30-second voice ads or a 15-second voice ads or whatever the skip side is. That is something which is definitely there, and that is something which you can use to continuously build a certain brand. But in terms of innovations, the voice offers a lot of innovation, which we probably haven't even tried out. Like for example, recently at InMovie we had done something for a brand in the automobile sector. Let's talk about it with Kia, and essentially the features, the Kia features were highlighted on a video screen. Using a voice assistance, in the sense the user was prompted to actually start asking for, taking up the sunroof or opening up the sunroof or rolling down the windows, so on and so forth. So that's just one example. But the whole point I'm trying to make is voice becomes an interaction point, and that interaction point can be driven into a lot of different areas of innovation, which can be used to give a customer a unique experience or experience the product as such. There have been, we have had, specific cases where we have done whole Pizza Hut ordering process through an ad, which was voice enabled, like right from the selection of the menu to the final order piece. Yeah, finally translation to the payment part had to be taken up separately, but that is something which we have done in a different country. So the other one, I think you might have also heard about the Flipkart story where Amitabh Bachchan had an interactive, the celebrity calling, which was done. So there are multiple things that you can do, the multiple formats you can utilize apart from the plain vanilla one, which anyway is there. And exploring this becomes the important piece, and that's how you have a sticky memory to the consumer, add a sticky memory to the consumer, because as such, it's a powerful medium. On top of that, you bring in that experience as well.
Anil, what do you think in terms of building a brand content ecosystem for this audio environment? Do you think the current ecosystem are ready, and what are the new enablers required if you have to move fairly quickly and deep into this area?
So the current ecosystem honestly is not ready. And I think that's a skill that brands and marketers and advertisers and the entire ecosystem needs to kind of invest in. Because if you were to look at the various interfaces and if you have a holistic voice strategy, then you need to look at an IVR, you need to look at chatbots, you need to look at podcasts. You also need to look at your entire brand content being narrated from a spoken content perspective. And all this means investment. It also means a shift and change in mindset. And I can see that brands are interested in this. They're taking baby steps in this space, but I would see a lot more needing to happen if brands have to genuinely own the space. That is point number one. The other point, interesting point, is it is not just about interjecting a small audio clip somewhere or one skill. It is about genuinely understanding this medium and figuring out how we can hack this medium. And it takes me back to a very interesting Burger King intervention in voice nearly 2-3 years ago, where they placed a voice assistant command in one of their TVCs. And that TVC played during prime time. And most people in America have got their voice assistant on, unlike India, where there are still some privacy concerns and stuff like that. And it automatically triggered voice assistants across the US, which was basically asking about, why is the Burger King burger the best? And that went to Wikipedia, picked up a lovely example of why Burger King makes the best burgers. And, it was promptly shut down. But the point is that was a very intuitive, hustle kind of way of using voice, coming from a very organic understanding of how this thing works. And like Sarah was saying, unlike us and some of the other panelists said that for us, it's still the psychology of command, but for a lot of the younger generation coming up, it's going to be part of their life. It's almost like a companion or a plaything. And therefore, we as advertisers, marketers, ideators, platform creators, we need to think and work harder. So a lot of work is needed in this space, Tushar.
Interesting. And I think one of the other key thing I see is basically, the mindset of campaign versus mindset of platform. When you get into this kind of environment, you need to have a slightly long-term commitment, deeper thinking, and a sort of better treatment. So yeah,
totally
well. Yeah, moving to Shankar, and so you heard Anil and Jayesh talk about sort of ad ecosystem, and you also look after sort of both the area, right? So advertising side of product as well as the brand product platforms. Where do you see brand fitting into that? So
sure. Yeah, so while we have a voice AI platform covering some of our apps and devices, we also have a RadTech GeoAds ecosystem today. So we are integrating both. We have integrated both, and this has enabled us to understand customers' intent, sentiments, product, and content affinity over a period of time. So that there's a rich data set that's available across this both these products. And at every such touch points, we have this rich insight integrated so that we can personalize the whole voice experience. Now, the voice is available as a plugin. To wherever, while there is a standalone product available through a interactive voice and video bot that I spoke about earlier, it is also integrated as a plugin to our advertising ecosystem, so that any brand, anybody who wants to come in and build a conversational experience, it is readily available and available in all the 10 languages that I spoke about. I mean, these touch points could works across devices. It could be a smartphone, it could be a feature phone, TV, and many of the upcoming device variants. And talking about the touch points itself, the customer touch points could be as part of a game, during video consumption, music streaming, conversation within the Hello Geo voice assistant, in voice shopping. We also work on RCS messaging, which also brings in a combination of text and voice as well, right? Or it could be directly invoked on a browser if the need be through a standard banner ad as well. So while all these said, talking a little more tech, but all this is available as an integrated piece. So, and it also provides a rich set of analytics on how consumers are interacting with voice, so that us as well as the brands get to know what is working and what is not working, so that there's continuous improvement and learning as well on what we offer. Given the data that we provide, we can personalize the whole experience, target the right brand for the right set of audience through our ecosystem. And I believe there are multiple opportunities for brands to engage with our wide spectrum of consumers. I'm happy to get into a conversation and discuss more offline, depending on whichever brands or marketers are interested.
Great. I'm sure readily there are many people in this sort of audience will reach out to your team on that, given your scale and size. Moving to Deepak, and this is often getting asked, Dilip, and in context of a skill or a sort of some of the Alexa activity, just wanted to understand what's a success metric look like? So, how does one look at when you're developing any skill or any of the sort of integration in Alexa kind of environment?
Yeah, for me, more than a metric, right? I look at it as a marker for success, right? And I'll build upon what Anil and the others spoke before, right? Anil and Kumar spoke especially, that we don't think voice is like a standalone service by itself, right? We don't think it is here to replace like the web or the mobile applications. It's more of a complement. And how can you sort of provide an enhanced experience with voice, right? And obviously in the web world, you think of, hey, every click I save, it's a reduced drop off of my customer funnel, right? Similarly, think of voice as a convenience layer, right? How can you make your experience more delightful, more engaging with voice, right? So I would say like brands should not start off their voice journey from a pure ROI mindset, right? They should not say, okay, I built something for voice. How many users did I get immediately on day one, right? That's not how people approached it when the app boom happened like a decade ago, right? So first start testing waters, because there is so much to it. And like what Anil was saying, voice itself can mean like 10 different things. So first start testing waters with what does voice mean in your context, right? Second is, I think platforms like Google, Alexa, we have done a lot of heavy lifting in terms of language understanding, speech recognition, NLP and the likes, right? So the rest of the tech work to be done by brands is not really rocket science. So I would say focus more on the design part. Focus more on what is the experience you want to build, what is the right design you want to have, because end of the day, in the previous advertising marketing world, you would have a one-way communication. In social media, you had a two-way, but there was no voice to it. Suddenly you have like two-way communication and a voice to your brand. So you need to figure out what should your brand personification look like, what does truly giving a voice to your brand literally mean, right? So think of the design elements. I remember one of our partners in the UK, I think BBC it was, they employed up to 100 people just to design experiences around voice, right? They had an entire voice division, because that's what it would take with all their offerings and services, right? So I would say the key metric you should look at is not like how many sales did I drive, but how sticky is my use case? Are people finding voice so good I come back and use it again? Otherwise, like say how Kumar is saying, I used voice once, I don't find it useful, just a gimmick, I don't come back, then there's no point of building it, right? So think of engagement, stickiness. Right? I'll give you a great example of a brand. Like we had a toothpaste brand build a voice experience for kids, right? The big problem they had was insight was kids don't like to brush their teeth. Very common in most households, right? So that a toothpaste brand carved out nice, beautiful stories which lasted for that exactly 1 minute during the brushing time. So kids could brush and hear those stories, and is connected to that whole activity of brushing, made it more joyous, right? And they kept coming back and back and back to it. Did it sell more toothpaste brands? Did it sell more units? We don't know. But it just resonated so well with that act of brushing and that compliance, right? Parents found it very useful for the children. So that's how marketeers should also think about using voice, and not just as a pure ROI machine.
Thanks. And I guess there are similar stories from Kumar. Kumar, you have been sort of working a lot on commerce activation around voice. So what's your experience on that? What kind of sort of directional delta you are seeing on those?
Sure. But before that, I think I just want to acknowledge what Dilip said. I, as a parent, have used those toothbrush apps. They really made a difference in the way my kids, when they were young, to actually brush. Right? That 1 minute, 2 minute, okay, earlier they would just brush and go, just act and go. They actually waited for the 1 minute and brushed, and there were levels that would do, and that actually helped build a brand too. It's those guys would remember those brands. There's a Disney ad and everything that came out. They would really connect to it. So all of that really happened. Anyway, so coming back to the question that you actually asked, So we are seeing like voice being adopted like from a voice commerce perspective, right? Like I think like from that perspective, it's like on happening on both B2B and B2C e-commerce players. So for like in consumers to be able to now use it, like you and me to be able to now use it as a consumer, and also for shopkeepers to be able to now use it, and distributors and other part of the chain, that the whole chain to be able to now use it uh, as part of their experience and to do various things. So the kind of common things that we typically see, like the use cases that brands are actually using, like there are 5 common ones that falls into. The most natural one is multilingual voice search, right? Where people can now discover items by voice, but voice also gives the ability to now do things with playing natural filters, saying, "Hey, show me toothbrush below 200 rupees." Right? Typically, which would have to now first type in toothbrush, then go pick a brand and go do a filter, price filter, and everything. No, all of that can be done very easily and more naturally. And even things like where, because of the multilingual aspect, they even the terms that they colloquially connect with, they could now use and speak, and then they didn't have to remember what exactly the brand calls it as. All of that thing the voice would typically handle. Another thing that was very commonly used is to be able to now do voice guided forms. So when there is a form, a lot of applications have like a form where they have to be able to now, you have to onboard the user during onboarding or at later points. You have to be able to now collect a series of information. Now there typically a lot of drop offs happen because people find it either they get distracted away or something happened that there is a lot of drop offs. Now with a voice guided form where voice asks you to keep prompting you, keep filling the next set of information through voice. So they are able to now do things in a multitask manner and not get distracted away. It reduces drop off because distractions will always happen, but it reduces the number of distractions that used to happen. And navigation, another very common one is like navigation, where users typically, when you land in an app, there are plethora of things that you can do. Right? Like even in a commerce app or a non-commerce app, there are hundreds of things that you can typically do in a popular app. Now users having to be able to now get to that is like always a challenge. They would have to remember the sequence in which they would have to get it. But void navigation, a simple command and more natural command, how they imagine what that functionality is, they could speak that. And the app then automatically takes them to that particular page and then lands them there, and they can continue the rest of the journey either by touch or continue by using voice. So whichever. Last two is like voice actions. Like this is very unique with voice, like where ability to now add items to cart with voice. Right? Like I think like Flipkart has done it, the Amazon has added some of it, and we do through some of our partners do. And we also allow things like list building, where the user can now blurt out a sequence of items: 2 kg onion, 5 kilogram tomato, like things like that. They just keep building out how you traditionally do in a shop scenario. And the app is now able to now handle all of that and process that information, because this is only possible through voice. Right? This is not possible in a traditional touch-based system at all. So that is another very common use case they do. And last but not least, I think this is again someone else I think, mentioned also, it's the notion of promotions, voice-based promotions. Like this is another
need. It is engagement. And from our perspective, I guess the ecosystem has to grow. Definitely work with your agencies. We are seeing like there is Slang Labs. We're seeing a whole lot of agencies which are only working from an app perspective, whether it's Bolted, Arrow AI, etc., which are creating for brands and which are creating solutions. We have about 1 million app actions on Google. We have worked with brands, whether it's Swiggy, where you can just use the Google Assistant, order from Swiggy, order from Reliance Fresh, Ola, Uber, Ghana. Like, I think it's really about how do you want to use voice to simplify a task for your user as they interact with technology. Yeah.
Thanks, Neha. We would love to take some questions, but I think we are already sort of exceeded our given time. And really thank you, panelists, and I think you're
by presenting text, first of all, allowing the user to select the content for the current assessment, and then presenting the text and recording the oral reading of the child. At the back end, we have, essentially what has been talked about a lot in this conference, the AI/ML voice, processing technology that evaluates the recordings on models that we built, which actually implement established reading rubrics and prepares a report. Eventually, we have a dashboard that can display these reports, and the reports revolve around these reading attributes that I just mentioned, such as accuracy, fluency, expressiveness, and confidence, all analyzed from the recording. And this can be done at multiple levels for a whole cohort or for an individual child across time and so on. So to give you an example, just to illustrate, how exactly it's used and in what kinds of setting, can we just move to the next slide? Okay, so this is a pilot we carried out in a school in northern Karnataka. So if you just play the video, we'll see how this child engages with the app. There's a story being presented on the screen in the form of text, and the child is reading it out. The recording is getting made in the process, and that's going to be available for analysis at the back end. So can you please play the video?
Trolls are sharp and stiff. Children don't like me. The next morning, when that little tree woke up, it had big leaves, just like the mango trees. Now I am happy, said the bubbly tree, but a great come along and tea up all the leaves. Oh dear, said the bubbly tree, I wish I had gold leaves. Gods do not eat gold leaves.
Yeah, thank you. Can we move to the next slide? So as you saw, yeah, so as you saw, there is a number of comments and feedback that's possible on listening to this child read. So what our product does is essentially achieve all this automatically. So for example, some of the analytics that we produce are, the distribution of these reading scores of reading skill on specific attributes like you see here, across, let's say, a whole class or, a particular section in the school. We also have these individual tracking mechanisms. So on the far right, you see two plots on top, which show how a child progresses across time over the course of months when these assessments are repeated. With reference to the class performance. So we see there's a large gap between this individual child and the class performance at the beginning, but the gap gradually narrows. So it's an example of some of the insights we get. And finally, we have a pie chart there below, which is kind of, capturing very representational data about assuming that we have benchmarks in place about, a snapshot of the performance across a very large cohort at any given time. And this is something we've been testing in urban, peri-urban, and rural India schools. And we find that in each, setting obviously, since we are doing this digitally, we have access to a lot of byproducts of the analysis. And this is just an example of where we might be looking for at, let's say, at vocabulary and familiarity and fluency with a certain vocabulary. So this just shows, for example, that in different settings, such as rural and urban schools, there are different words that trip students up. And this, for example, might be very valuable to someone who's designing the content or planning some kind of particular, education intervention. Yeah, next, please. Okay, so to kind of summarize some of the main kind of advantages of this kind of digital assessment. Of course, it's very clear that it's objective because it's essentially based on computation, and the computation itself has been trained, on a large amount of field data. It's reliable in the sense it's repeatable, consistent. It's like anytime testing that's available, and it's extremely consistent, of course, being digital and having this program in place and not depending on the availability, let's say, of teachers or evaluators and so on. It's scalable because it's digital. Enjoyable, that was a really big part of the design to make it kind of fun and engaging, for the children who are actually, being assessed, but all the same, liking the experience. That was a very important consideration in the design itself. So it's a comprehensive tool for spoken language, especially at this point for oral reading, which provides real-time data. So we have a lot of data available, and that can really be customized to the particular needs, of the context and setting in which the impact assessment is being carried out. Can we go to the next slide? So our roadmap going forward, so we've done some testing over the past several months, is to build the app to assess students, in order to increase its scope to more languages. In particular, we are looking at Hindi next. And to scale the app, across India in terms of, trying to pilot at more schools in India. And of course, finally, there's nothing really stopping us from going to schools in emerging markets and places where very similar literacy challenges exist. Finally, Happy Lingo, which is what the app is named, has a potential to work with any existing technology to reach general users who want to build their language skills. So I'd like to close on that note, with what we are looking forward to do, and hand it over to Rama. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. I did notice there's a question in the Q&A, Professor. I think you might want to take it. We're quite happy.
Or maybe I can look at it.
In case we run out of time.
Okay. Should I answer that question, Rama? It asks about whether there are other available similar apps. Okay. Yeah, so I think just to give you a perspective, this is part of a research project we did, and it happens to be a very active area of research. This whole, idea of assessing spoken language, where you're trying to, listen critically to the way language is being used. In this case, reading for, let's say, the accent, the fluency, and so on. So this is an area of research that's something that we see a lot in, speech conferences. As for off-the-shelf,
encourage your clients to do the same and continue to participate in events such as these that push your thinking on new developments such as voice, audio, and changes to consumer behavior. The topic for today is voice, and we know that voice search in terms of preference has gone through the roof. And this is not only in urban areas, but rural awareness has seen a rise too. The voice ecosystem is an emerging segment in marketing communications as voice search, connected devices, and voice-enabled commerce adoption grow. Wavemaker and Ogilvy's work with Mondelez, as well as Google, are good examples of how WPP is willing to push the envelope, connect